Welcome to a journey through time, where the fate of Europe was rewritten by the will of one man. From the rugged hills of Corsica to the golden halls of imperial power, this is the epic story of Napoleon Bonaparte, a soldier, a strategist, a storm that shook the world. In this video, we'll follow his rise from obscurity to the throne, and uncover how ambition, war, and destiny carved the path of an empire. Let the story begin.
You are born on a storm-tossed island in the Mediterranean, on the 15th day of August, 1769. Corsica, your homeland, is a rugged and defiant place, still echoing with the chants of rebellion. Only a year before your birth, it had been an independent republic under the fiery leadership of Pasquale Paoli, a man your father once followed with unwavering loyalty. But now, Corsica is French. The tricolor doesn't yet fly over the ramparts of Ajaccio, but the Bourbon crown has claimed the island, and the old Corsican dreams of liberty lie shattered beneath French boots. You are Napoleon Bonaparte, the second of 8 surviving children. Your family, nobility in name but not in wealth, lives modestly. Your father, Carlo Bonaparte, is a lawyer who quickly adapts to the new regime, earning favor from the French to secure your family's future. He takes you to the courts, to government offices, to aristocratic banquets where Corsican pride is a fragile mask worn behind forced smiles. Your mother, Letizia Ramolino, is fierce, austere, and devout. From her, you inherit discipline. From your father, ambition. From Corsica, fire, but you are never fully Corsican nor truly French. At home, you speak Italian and Corsican. At school, you must learn French, a language you don't understand and won't pronounce well for many years. The boys in your school laugh at your accent, at your dark skin, at your coarse manners. You clench your fists but say nothing. You read Plutarch instead. By the age of 9, you are sent across the sea to France, entering the Royal Military Academy at Brienne-le-Château. It is a cold northern place where snow buries the grass and the air smells of ink and discipline. You are alone here, young and foreign. The sons of French aristocrats scorn your shabby clothes and outsider name. You cannot duel them all. Instead, you retreat into books. You read Caesar and Tacitus. You consume Rousseau, Voltaire, and Machiavelli. You memorize maps, study artillery, and begin to see the world not in nations or kings, but in opportunities. At Brienne, your teachers recognize your brilliance. You are moody, yes, withdrawn and sometimes defiant, but your mind is quick, exacting, relentless. You prefer the solitude of study to the company of boys. You walk the halls imagining the movements of armies, the thunder of cannons, the collapse of empires. While others dream of duels and dances, you write essays on how to invade England. You stay 5 long years at Brienne. Then, at age 15, you earn a place at the École Militaire in Paris, the most prestigious military academy in the kingdom. There, in the heart of a glittering capital you both admire and despise, your destiny begins to take shape. But your father has died, and your family is now penniless. You are forced to complete the 2-year course in just 1. You eat little, sleep rarely, and stretch every franc you have. Still, you excel. You choose the artillery corps, the branch where precision and calculation matter more than bloodline or social charm. And in 1785, at just 16, you graduate as a 2nd lieutenant in the Royal Artillery. A Corsican boy, barely a man, now commissioned in the King's Army of France. Yet France is not a land at peace. The air stirs with hunger, with rumor, with revolution, and you, restless, driven, watching, are ready. You are stationed in Valence, a sleepy garrison town in southeastern France. As a newly minted 2nd lieutenant, your duties are modest, inspecting equipment, drilling recruits, overseeing the storage of powder and shot. You study geometry and ballistics obsessively. You write to your family in Corsica, longing for home, but you also bury yourself in books. The works of Rousseau are never far from your cot. The social contract burns in your hands. The idea that sovereignty belongs not to kings, but to the people. Yes, that resonates with you. France is cracking. You can feel it in the letters you receive in the conversations at the officers' mess, in the hungry faces of the villagers. Bread is scarce, taxes are heavy. The nobility still prance through salons while peasants trudge through mud. Your fellow officers mock the revolutionaries in Paris. You do not. You understand what is coming. You do not merely see the old world collapsing. You begin to dream of how it might be rebuilt. Meanwhile, Corsica pulls at your heart. In 1786, you return to the island on extended leave. Paoli, the exiled patriot, has returned as well, now welcomed back by the revolutionaries in Paris. He speaks of self-governance, of liberty, of a Corsica for Corsicans. You admire him still. You want to be his heir. But things do not go as you hoped. Your time in France has changed you. You are now seen as too French for the Corsicans, too Corsican for the French. You write pamphlets defending revolutionary ideals, criticizing Paoli's resistance to union with France. The older man sees you as impetuous, ambitious, and perhaps dangerous. You see him as sentimental, trapped in the past. A rift opens and it will never fully close. Back in France, the fire spreads. It is 1789 and the Bastille has fallen. The king is besieged by mobs and pamphlets. The monarchy wavers, the people march. And you, Lieutenant Bonaparte, watch with keen eyes and clenched jaw. You know revolutions devour the slow and indecisive. You will not be either. By 1791, you are promoted to first lieutenant. You are assigned once again to Corsica, this time with authority, with uniform, with a mission to carry the tricolor and the ideals of the Republic. But the island is unraveling. Paoli leads a local rebellion against French control, calling it a betrayal of Corsican sovereignty. You are caught in the storm. Families turn on each other. Blood is shed on ancestral soil. You side with France. Your family is forced to flee. You sail from Ajaccio under cover of night, watching the coastline fade. You are 23, exiled from your homeland. Corsica will never be home again. But now you are free. Free to rise. You arrive in mainland France not as a hero, but as a refugee. A Corsican lieutenant with no patron, no wealth, and no property. Your uniform is threadbare, your accent still mocked, your name still foreign. But you carry something more valuable than gold. A mind honed by adversity and a vision forged in fire. It is now 1793, and the French Republic teeters on the edge of chaos. The guillotine sings daily in Paris. Robespierre and the Jacobins hunt traitors with cold resolve. In the south, the Royalists have seized Toulon and handed the vital port over to the British fleet. The revolution, barely born, now risks being strangled in its cradle. France needs soldiers. France needs leaders. And you, 24 years old, unknown, ambitious, volunteer to help take Toulon back. You arrive at the siege as a captain in the artillery, but within days your intellect makes itself known. You observe the scattered French positions, the lack of coordination, the wasted firepower. You march through the mud between batteries, sketching diagrams and proposing new strategies. You study the British defenses, not their walls, but their supply lines. You understand what most generals don't. This is not a war of glory, but of geometry. You recommend that the French concentrate their guns on the heights overlooking the harbor. If you can take those hills, the Royal Navy will be forced to retreat. It is a bold plan, daring, but it works. Under your direction, redoubts rise from the earth like teeth. Cannons are dragged up slopes by men who barely understand why. Until they see the British fleet begin to withdraw. On December 17th, the final assault begins. You lead from the front. You are wounded in the thigh, nearly killed. But Toulon falls. The victory is decisive. The Republic is saved, at least for now, and you, Napoleon Bonaparte, are no longer a nameless artilleryman. You are a hero of the Revolution. They speak your name in Paris now. Toulon and Bonaparte become inseparable in every military report and café conversation, and not just as an officer but as a visionary, a man who turned geometry into artillery, who turned strategy into salvation. The Committee of Public Safety, ever hungry for success, takes notice. Robespierre himself nods in approval. And so, in a France ablaze with suspicion and revolution, you are promoted to Brigadier General at the age of 24. But success, like revolution, is unstable. Robespierre falls, consumed by the same blade he once fed. The reign of terror ends, and suddenly your rapid rise is no longer a badge of merit, but a cause for suspicion. You are arrested. You, the hero of Toulon. You, the savior of the Southern Front. Thrown into prison like a common conspirator. Forgotten for weeks in a dank cell, while rival officers scramble to bury your name. But once again, your timing is impeccable. Robespierre's fall means the Jacobins are purged, but it also leaves the army in disarray. France still needs soldiers, still needs generals, and few can deny your genius. After a few weeks of uncertainty, you are released, quietly, cautiously. The Republic does not trust many men, but it trusts talent. It is now 1795. The monarchy is gone, the revolutionaries are scattered, and the streets of Paris boil with unrest. Royalists rally to overthrow the Directory, the shaky government that replaced Robespierre's tyranny with uncertainty. Paris threatens to fall into chaos again. They remember you, and once more, they summon your guns. In October of that year, the Royalist insurrection reaches the heart of the city. They pour into the streets, hoping to restore the Bourbon monarchy by force. The Directory panics. The army is stretched thin. They turn to the only man who has proven he knows how to silence rebellion. You do not hesitate. You ask for cannons. You ask for grape shot. You ask for men who will follow you without question. And you deliver the infamous whiff of grape shot. Your artillery tears through the insurrectionists like a scythe through tall grass. Blood stains the pavements. Saint Roch. The uprising is crushed in a single day. It is brutal. It is efficient. It is exactly what the Directory needs. Paris wakes up the next morning, not just to quiet, but to a new name on every tongue. General Napoleon Bonaparte. You stand now at a strange crossroad, not on a battlefield, but in a marble hall, lit by chandeliers, surrounded by powdered wigs and murmured alliances. You are a general of the Republic, yes, but also an outsider among the Directory's elite. They see your brilliance, they fear your ambition, but they need your sword. Among them, one figure catches your eye, graceful, elegant, with a smile that carries both mystery and command. Her name is Josephine de Beauharnais. She is everything you are not, born into nobility, experienced in the ways of salons and courtly charm. A widow of a guillotined nobleman, a survivor of the revolution's madness, and now a socialite with powerful connections. You are captivated, not only by her beauty but by what she represents. Entry into the heart of France's political web. At first, she resists your advances. You are young, intense, awkward in conversation. But your letters, oh, your letters, are fire. You write to her not as a suitor, but as a storm. Since I left you, I have been constantly depressed. My happiness is to be near you. You sign your name like a sword slash across the page. Bonaparte. In March 1796, she yields. You marry her in a quiet civil ceremony, though she lies about her age to appear closer to yours. You don't care. With her, you gain more than affection. You gain access to the very heart of the Directory. The generals murmur. The politicians watch. But the ink is dry. You are no longer just a soldier. You are a player. And the Republic, torn by enemies within and without, needs someone to fight for. It abroad. Someone ruthless, someone brilliant, someone like you. A week after the wedding, you are ordered to lead the army of Italy. At first, it feels like an insult. The army of Italy is a joke, underfed, unpaid, demoralized, and stranded in the Alps. But you see it not as a burden, but as a stage. France is desperate to strike back against Austria, the ancient empire that seeks to restore monarchy across Europe. Northern Italy is the gateway. You depart Paris not as a groom, but as a blade drawn from its sheath. Josephine remains behind. Your heart aches, but your mind sharpens. You know what this campaign means. This is not Toulon. This is not Paris. This is your chance to reshape Europe. You cross the Alps not as Hannibal once did with elephants, but with hunger in your belly and fire in your veins. You ride at the front, not from vanity, but necessity. Your soldiers do not yet trust you, and you must win their faith not with speeches but with victories. You find the army of Italy as broken as the rumors promised, ragged, barefoot, mutinous. But you speak to them not as a general behind a desk, but as one of their own. Soldiers, you are naked and ill-fed. The government owes you much but can give you nothing. I will lead you into the most fertile plains in the world. There you will find honor, glory, and riches. They believe you, not because of your rank, but because you believe it yourself. Then, with terrifying speed, you strike. You move faster than any army commander before you. You separate the Austrians from their Piedmontese allies. You maneuver, with the logic of chess and the fury of revolution. At Montenotte, Millesimo, Dago, you win, again and again. You force the Kingdom of Sardinia to sue for peace within weeks. You are 26. The Austrians had thought Italy a side theater. You turn it into a crucible. You write your own communiques full of thunder and poetry, and publish them directly to the people of France. They eat it up. Your name becomes a brand. Your victories are not just military, they are theatrical, mythological. You aren't just defeating armies, you are shaping narrative. The Directory grows uneasy. You were meant to serve the Republic, not become its face. But they cannot stop you because you win. Your campaign rages on. At Lodi, you face an Austrian rearguard across a narrow bridge under heavy fire. Others hesitate. You do not. You seize a flag and charge forward yourself. Bullets whip past your face. Soldiers later say you seemed invincible, untouchable. After the smoke clears, the Austrians retreat, and your legend is sealed. The name, Little Corporal, spreads among the troops, a term of affection and awe. You eat with your men, sleep beside them on the ground, march with them. Your presence alone lifts morale. They would follow you anywhere. You don't just conquer territory. You transform it. You enter Milan not as a looter, but as a liberator. You dismantle feudal systems, establish new republics, take art from palaces and ship it to Paris, declaring it the property of all France. You are no longer just a general. You are becoming something more, a symbol, a storm, a star rising fast, and too brightly for comfort. Back in Paris, the Directory sees you with mixed eyes, awe and fear. You send them riches, but also reports laced with independence. You negotiate treaties, issue proclamations, even install governments. What general does that? But what can they do? The public adores you. The army worships you, and Europe fears you. By the end of 1797, you have shattered the Austrian hold on Italy, forced them to the table at Campo Formio, and redrawn the map, not from a palace, from your tent, with your own hand. You return to France a hero, riding a wave of acclaim unlike anything seen since Caesar crossed the Rubicon. Crowds cheer, artists paint your triumph, poets sing your name. Even Josephine, once cool and distant, now fears losing you. You are no longer the Corsican outsider. You are Napoleon Bonaparte, the sword of the revolution. But in your eyes, this is only the beginning. The Republic is fragile. Europe is old and weak. The world waits, and you, only 28, feel destiny whisper in your ear. The world will not be ruled by kings. It will be ruled by men of merit, men like you. The world will not be ruled by kings. It will be ruled by men of merit, men like you. And yet, even as Paris chants your name and the salons toast your victories in Italy, your eyes drift toward the horizon, south and east across the Mediterranean, where lies a land older than Europe, steeped in sand, legend, and empire. You think of Alexander, of Caesar. Their greatness did not stop at their own borders. Why should yours? The Directory fears your power, but cannot cage it. They offer you a new command, not to invade Britain, that would be too bold, too immediate, but to strike at its empire through a distant jewel, Egypt. It is a mission cloaked in strategy, but you see it for what it truly is. A stage vaster than Europe, a theater where you will not just fight armies, but time itself. You will stand among ruins that whispered to pharaohs. You will carve your name beside hieroglyphs, and so begins the next chapter of your ascent, not with a sword drawn over European fields, but with sails catching wind toward the east. The sea rolls beneath your feet as your armada glides across the Mediterranean. You stand on the deck of your flagship, the Orient, eyes fixed on the horizon. The wind carries the scent of salt and destiny. Behind you sail over 300 ships, transports, warships, scholars, engineers, dreamers. You are not merely invading. You are bringing a revolution of ideas. The year is 1798, and your mission, at least on paper, is to strike at British influence in the East by cutting off the Red Sea route to India. But you harbor a deeper ambition. Egypt is not just a pawn on the board of empires. It is a crown waiting for a new pharaoh. And you, Napoleon Bonaparte, intend to wear it. The waves rise and fall beneath the Orient as you peer toward the southern horizon, hands clasped behind your back, the sea wind tugging at your cloak. Behind you, the armada stretches across the glinting waters like a living serpent. Warships, supply vessels, transports packed with soldiers, horses, cannon, paper, and ink. You are not alone. You sail not just with 35,000 troops, but with over 150 savants, astronomers, mathematicians, artists, linguists, engineers, and botanists, men of reason and wonder. This is not merely a campaign of conquest. It is an expedition of enlightenment, a war of canon and culture. You will bring the revolution not just to thrones, but to temples, to sand. It is bold, grand, mad, even, and it is yours alone. The Directory smiles as they send you off. Let him chase British dreams in the East, they think. Let him drown in Ottoman sands. Better there than in Paris. They forget that you have never been safer than when you are moving, and you are moving faster than history can follow. You left Toulon in May 1798 under the cover of secrecy. Malta fell in days. A fortress for centuries, it crumbled like chalk before your determined engineers. The Knights of St. John offered barely a protest. You left a garrison and pressed on. Now Egypt awaits. Alexandria rises on the horizon, a ghost of ancient splendor buried in sand. You imagine Caesar here and Alexander before him, carving their fates into stone and history. The name alone stirs your blood, Alexandria. You will not simply take it, you will awaken it. On July 1st, the first longboats hit the shore. Sand and salt sting the faces of your grenadiers as they disembark. The port is poorly defended, Ottoman garrisons sleepy, unprepared. You storm the walls before nightfall. Alexandria falls with hardly a whisper. But you give no time to celebrate. Egypt is vast, and the Mamluks are not fools. You summon your officers and issue your first proclamation to the Egyptian people, crafted in Arabic script, composed by your scholars. People of Egypt, you will be told that I come to destroy your religion. Do not believe it. I have come to restore your rights. I respect God more than the Mamluks do. The words are cunning, calculated. You do not merely conquer. You reframe. You do not march into Egypt as a foreign invader. You present yourself as a liberator, chosen by Allah himself to topple the corrupt and deliver justice. It is propaganda, but it works. The peasants listen. The Mamluks scoff. And you march toward Cairo. The desert does not welcome you. The heat is infernal. The sun becomes an enemy that never sleeps. Your men collapse under the weight of packs and thirst. Camels die. Morale withers like the dry reeds along the Nile. But you press on, keeping the column moving, refusing to let it splinter. Ahead, the Mamluk Beys, Murad and Ibrahim, gather cavalry. thousands of them. Horsemen clad in silk and steel, riding like thunder, swords curved like the crescent moon. They do not know you. They think you are another crusader, another infidel to be drowned in sand. They will learn. On July 21st, you meet them at the edge of Cairo, and the world holds its breath. July 21st, 1798. The Nile glimmers behind you like a silver ribbon lost in sand. Ahead, the horizon churns with dust, thousands of hooves pounding the earth in a rising storm. The Mamluks have come. Their banners flutter in the scorching wind, brilliant with golden crescents and calligraphy. The sun gleams off their sabers. Murad Bey commands the charge himself, surrounded by the flower of Egypt's warrior caste. Their horses are bred for speed and shock, their pride forged in centuries of battle. They ride with the confidence of conquerors, the fury of tradition and the arrogance of men who believe they cannot be broken. But you are not the crusaders they remember. You are the revolution, and you have come prepared. You order your divisions into square formations. Your signature tactic: 4 ranks deep, bayonets fixed outward like bristling porcupines, artillery nestled safely at the corners, cavalry inside to respond to any breach. You do not chase them. You wait. The Mamluks gallop forward, sabers raised, war cries splitting the desert air. They come in waves, fast, beautiful, terrifying. Their horses crash against your squares like waves on rock. But your lines do not break. Muskets thunder, cannons roar, blood sprays the sand. They come again and again. Each time your soldiers hold. Each time the squares spit fire and lead. From your command post, you watch without blinking. You give orders with calm precision. Where others would panic, you calculate. You are not just fighting cavalry, you are dissecting them. You see their weaknesses, their vanity, their reliance on chaos. You answer with geometry. The battle rages for hours. The desert becomes a furnace of smoke and screams. Mamluk horses stumble over bodies. Warriors retreat only to regroup and charge once more. But the outcome is sealed by the sun's arc. As evening falls, Murad Bey flees. His army is shattered. The field is yours. And just beyond the horizon, silhouetted in the dying light, the pyramids rise. They do not speak, but you hear them. They have stood for 4,000 years. And now, they stand witness to your triumph. You turn to your men, sweat-streaked and dust-covered, and shout, "From the heights of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down upon you." The phrase is a myth in the making. Your voice echoes not only across the sands, but into the pages of history. Soldiers cheer, trumpets sound. You have won more than a battle. You have won a symbol. You are not merely a general now. You are Pharaoh. Cairo opens its gates days later, its scholars stunned, its imams watchful. The people do not resist, but they do not embrace you either. You enter the city like Caesar into Alexandria, not as a brute, but as a mind. You set up the Institut d'Egypte. Your scientists document the flora, the insects, the ruins. They marvel at the obelisks and tombs. You commission drawings of temples. Your men discover the Rosetta Stone, a slab of basalt inscribed in 3 languages. It will one day unlock the mysteries of ancient Egypt, but for now it lies forgotten in the dust, another stone beneath your stride. You try to win the hearts of the locals. You attend Islamic ceremonies. You claim you too are a servant of Allah. You speak through interpreters with practiced respect, but suspicion simmers. The scholars may be intrigued, the peasants may be indifferent, but the ulama, the religious elite, they watch you closely. They hear your words and smell your ambition. You have conquered Cairo, but you have not yet conquered Egypt. Victory, you have learned, is not the same as peace. You sit in the governor's palace in Cairo, surrounded by advisors and maps. Yet the air feels heavier than it did on the battlefield. Here you do not face cavalry charges. You face silence. Glances, prayers whispered in your absence. The city has submitted, but it has not surrendered. The bazaars bustle, but you sense something beneath the chatter, something watching you. Your proclamations are read aloud from minarets, your French Arabic. Leaflets proclaim liberty, reason, justice. You declare yourself friend of the Prophet, protector of Islam, deliverer from the Mamluks. But behind the lattice screens, the imams murmur among themselves. The coffee houses buzz with rumors, and in the mosques, your name is followed by silence. The Egyptians have seen many conquerors. They know how to wait. And so you move first. You set up a divan, a council of elders. Egyptians, Turks, even a few ulama are seated under the illusion of power. You allow them to wear their robes, keep their titles, hear petitions, but you make the rules. You pull the strings. You send patrols through the souks. You impose curfews. You arrest dissenters. You print newspapers extolling French science, French culture, French enlightenment. Your savants study hieroglyphs, drain swamps, measure stars. You conduct experiments in front of stunned scholars, lifting balloons into the sky, projecting light through glass. You hope awe will do what fear cannot. But awe fades, and fear turns to fury. October brings the uprising. Begins in the heart of the city. Friday prayers end, and as the mosques empty, the signal is given. Knives flash, drums sound. Mobs swarm through alleys with cries of, "Death to the infidels." Your men are caught off guard. Bayonets clash with scimitars in narrow streets. Cannons are hauled into position in crowded courtyards. Blood runs down the steps of the Al-Azhar Mosque. For 3 days, Cairo burns. You do not hesitate. You bring artillery to the gates of the mosque. You bombard the minarets. You shell holy ground. The message is clear. Resistance will not be tolerated no matter where it hides. When the smoke clears, thousands lie dead. The rebellion is crushed. Silence returns, but it is different now. This is not submission. This is seething. In public, you offer pardons. You speak again of peace, of reform, of progress. But in private, you grow restless. You pace your chambers. The war in Egypt is not like Italy. The enemy is not just men. It is belief, language, memory, myth. It slips through your fingers even as you grip it tighter, and yet you cannot turn back. There is still the matter of the British. They have not forgotten you. The sands of Egypt still smolder beneath your feet when word reaches you from the sea. A storm is coming, but not of wind or sand. This one sails with canvas wings and British flags. Admiral Horatio Nelson has found you. You had gambled when you came here. Left France behind with a fleet, with dreams of empire, with the hope that the seas would remain silent. You had slipped past the British blockade once, but the Mediterranean never forgets. And Nelson is its memory, its vengeance, its blade. You receive the report in the morning. Urgent, shaken. A flotilla of British ships, armed to the teeth, has been spotted near Aboukir Bay. They've found your fleet. The very ships that carried you here, the backbone of your campaign. And they are vulnerable, anchored, exposed, unprepared. You are too far inland. You cannot reach them in time, so you wait. And while you wait, the sea turns red. The Battle of the Nile begins at dusk. Nelson's ships descend like wolves. They split your line. They anchor where no man expected. They fire broadside after broadside, their hulls close enough to taste the flame. Your admirals, brave though they are outmaneuvered. The French flagship L'Orient, pride of your navy, explodes in a ball of fire that lights the sky for miles. Men are hurled into the air like rag dolls. Flames consume canvas and bone. When morning comes, only wreckage remains. The sea is littered with broken masts, shattered hulls, and the dead. Your fleet is gone. You are stranded. Egypt, once your stage for glory, is now your prison. The implications sink in like stones. No reinforcements, no resupply, no escape. The British dominate the sea, and you hold only sand. But where others would despair, you burn brighter. You launch a campaign into the heart of the Levant. If you cannot retreat, then you will conquer forward. Jaffa, Gaza, Acre. You march north through ancient lands, through deserts and ruins, through plagues and ambushes. Your men begin to falter. The heat is merciless. Water is scarce. Disease festers, but your will remains. In Jaffa, you find Turkish defenders and you show no mercy. The city falls. Prisoners are executed. Your name becomes a whisper of terror. You write letters back to France, carefully crafted tales of victory, progress, discovery. You control the narrative, even when the reality is sand in your boots and rot in your ranks. At Acre, you meet your match. The walls are high. The defense is led by a wily British officer, Sidney Smith, who uses captured French cannons against you. You lay siege, but the city does not fall. Time, disease, and attrition grind your army to the bone. You retreat, not in disgrace, but in silence. Back in Cairo, the dream of Egypt flickers. Your scientists continue their work. The savants publish volumes on Egypt's ancient glory. The Rosetta Stone is discovered. Knowledge grows, but your power wanes. And then in secret you decide France needs you. The Directory is weak. Paris is restless. Your enemies gather like vultures. You cannot be an emperor in exile. And so, one night in August 1799, you board a ship quietly, swiftly. You leave Egypt behind, your army, your dream, your failures. You sail home to revolution, to destiny. The winds carry you northward as silently as you came. The shores of Egypt vanish into the horizon, swallowed by memory. You do not look back. You land in France not as a failure, but as a hero. No word of the defeat at Acre. No tales of the dead at Abu Qir. The Egyptian campaign in your telling is a triumph, a civilizing mission, a scientific endeavor, a symbol of French greatness. And the people believe you. France has changed in your absence. The Directory is weaker than ever. Inflation is rampant. Armies starve. The revolution, so long aflame, now flickers under the winds of disillusion. The time is ripe. Your return is theatrical. You ride through streets lined with cheering crowds. Children chant your name. The press, silenced or swayed, sings your praises. But your eyes are already set on Paris, not for admiration, but for conquest. A different kind of conquest. Not one, waged with cannon and cavalry, but with whispers, alliances, paper and pen. You do not need another battlefield. France itself is your battlefield. You assemble allies in secret. CAS, Talleyrand, your loyal brother Lucien. Men disillusioned with the chaos of revolution, hungry for order, for stability. Men who see in you a sword that can bring silence to the storm. The plan takes form, a coup. Not for personal glory, at least not yet, but for salvation. That is what you tell them. France must be saved. And only you can do it. On the 18th of Brumaire, November 9th, 1799, the plan is set in motion. Troops loyal to you occupy strategic points in Paris. The Directory is paralyzed. Your enemies are confused, then silenced. In a moment of raw theater, you storm the Council of 500, face red with fury, cloak soaked from the cold, and demand order. There is shouting, resistance, a blade is drawn. Your life nearly ends on the floor of that chamber. But Lucien saves you, with words sharper than swords. He commands the soldiers to clear the hall, declares you the savior of the Republic. The coup succeeds. By nightfall, France is yours. As the final embers of the coup die out beneath the blood-orange Parisian dawn, you are no longer a general, nor a mere returning hero. You are first consul of France. Your ascent is swift, almost mythical. The Constitution of the year 88 is ratified in a fog of propaganda and coercion. A plebiscite follows, its results suspiciously unanimous. But the people do not care for legality. They care for bread, for peace, for a man who promises both. And that man is you. You understand power, not as a sword, but as a scalpel. You move with precision. You do not dismantle the Republic. You drape yourself in its robes. You preserve its language while subverting its spirit. You call yourself a servant, all while assuming the throne. In the shadowed salons of Paris, dissent still breathes, but only in whispers. You reorganize the government, centralize authority, restore the clergy to a measured place, establish the Bank of France, introduce the Napoleonic Code. You codify order like a general marshalling troops. The chaotic pulse of the revolution is still now, replaced by the march of structure and control. France exhales. For the first time in a decade, there is calm, but you are not content. Peace is not your nature. Peace is a pause. Europe watches, uneasy. Monarchs fear the ambition in your eyes, and rightly so. Your treaties with Austria and Britain are but paper shields. War, you know, is inevitable. And when it comes, it will be your crucible. But for now, you consolidate. You charm the press, court the arts, parade through boulevards to the cheers of thousands. You are not just ruler, you are legend in the making, and yet you remain haunted. Egypt has not left you. In the quiet of the Tuileries, you remember the desert, the heat, the slaughter, the sound of waves in Abu Qir Bay. You remember the men you left behind, the failure you never confessed, the empire you almost built, and you vow, next time it will not be sand you conquer, it will be thrones. Your gaze shifts across the map, to Italy, to Austria, to Prussia, to Spain, to Russia, to England. You dream not as a general, nor even as a ruler, but as a Caesar reborn. In your private study, beneath the marble busts of ancient Rome, you pen a new future, line by line, battle by battle, crown by crown. The world has seen the rise of Napoleon, the general. Now it will witness the rise of Napoleon the emperor. And so the Republic breathes under your command, but only as a chrysalis. The true shape of France, of Europe, is yet to emerge, and like a sculptor chiseling marble, you must mold it with steel. Your eyes fall on Italy once more. The memories of Lodi, Arcole, and Rivoli are not relics. They are blueprints. Austria, bruised but unbroken, rises again. The second coalition still festers, and your brief peace is but the hush before the deluge. Britain snarls across the Channel. Russia, though distant, flexes. And Austria remains the eternal rival. You move swiftly. In May 1800, with Alpine winds clawing at your cloak, you lead your army across the great St. Bernard Pass. It is a feat of myth, Hannibal reborn. Cannons are hauled by ropes through snow-blind trails. Horses falter, men freeze, but the dream marches on. You are not merely surprising your enemy, you are astounding the world. At the plains of Marengo, Austria strikes first. The French line buckles, victory teeters. For a moment, the dream seems fragile. But then Desai arrives, loyal, bold, and the tide turns. You seize the opening with your classic fury. Victory blooms from the edge of ruin. The Austrians are broken. The gates of Milan swing open. Italy is yours again. The result is more than land, it is legend. Marengo is etched into your mythos. The people whisper not of generals, but of saviors. And in your mind, this is not conquest. It is coronation. Yet you know legends are fragile. Back in Paris, you move like a maestro. Every stroke of policy, every public appearance, every whisper, in the chambers of the Conseil d'État, builds toward a single moment: permanence. In 1802, the consulate is made for life. Another plebiscite, another miracle of numbers. You wear the mantle of eternity. But still, you are not emperor. Not yet. Your enemies sense what comes. Britain refuses peace. The Treaty of Amiens shatters like glass. The third coalition forms. Britain, Austria, Russia, an unholy trinity forged in fear of you. You respond as only you can, with action. Thousands of men train along the northern coast. In Boulogne, a great armada is assembled. You contemplate invasion, crossing the Channel, humbling the British Lion on its own soil. But the sea is not your element. Nelson's shadow haunts the waves. You understand this truth. The road to domination does not lie across water. It lies through Europe. So you change course. A new campaign brews. Armies are forged with breathtaking speed. You form the Grande Armée, not just a force, but a machine of precision, loyalty, and revolutionary zeal. It is the hammer with which you will shape a continent. And at the head of it rides not a general, not a consul, but something more. Your eyes gleam. Your step grows heavier with inevitability. The world senses it. You are preparing for a crown. Paris trembles with anticipation. Rumors circulate like wildfire through salons, cafes, and marketplaces. Something ancient is returning, an echo of Rome, of Charlemagne, of empire. The Senate moves first. Their decree is the whisper before. The roar, the first consul shall become emperor of the French. You accept with measured grace, but behind closed doors. Every thread of this moment has been woven by your hand. The plebiscite is a triumph of will and orchestration. Millions vote, overwhelmingly in favor. You understand the spectacle of democracy, but you also understand that its true power lies in direction. The people believe it is their voice that lifts you to the heavens. That belief is your greatest strength. Now the stage must be set. Notre-Dame de Paris is transformed. Not a cathedral, but a theater of destiny. Tapestries shimmer, golden eagles glitter. The Pope himself, Pius VII, travels across Europe to preside over your coronation. It is a spectacle drawn from the ancients. But this is no mere imitation. December 2nd, 1804, a date you will inscribe into eternity. As organ music thunders and incense wafts through the nave, you ascend the steps to the altar. The crown is presented, crafted in the likeness of Charlemagne's. But here, tradition breaks. You take the crown from the Pope's trembling hands. Slowly, deliberately, you place it upon your own head. The world gasps. You are not crowned by God, nor by the Church. You are crowned by yourself. Then, with care, you place a second crown upon Josephine. She kneels before you, and you lift her, not as a woman, but as an empress. Thunderous applause echoes. Trumpets blare. France does not merely see a new ruler, it sees a new age. You do not reign by bloodline. You reign by merit, by vision, by the sheer force of your will. And in that moment, beneath the arches of Notre-Dame, the revolution comes full circle. You are no longer its child. You are its master. Europe does not kneel. Even as you ascend the throne, even as trumpets sound across France and coins bear your new visage, the old order snarls. Kings and emperors see not a sovereign, but a usurper. They do not fear your title. They fear your ideas. To them, your empire is a contagion, born from revolution, spreading through diplomacy and war alike. So they draw swords. The Third Coalition coalesces: Britain, Austria, Russia, Sweden. Monarchs that once squabbled over borders now unite against the single figure who threatens the very notion of divine right. You, who once slept on cannon barrels and scribbled battle plans by candlelight, are now the axis upon which their fear spins. You do not flinch. The Grande Armée is no longer an army. It is an organism, a living force of precision, speed, and zeal. Hardened by Italian victories and reshaped by reforms, it is yours in spirit and blood. Every drumbeat echoes your ambition. Every standard raised, every saber drawn, pulses with your will, and now you march east. The campaign of 1805 begins not with a roar, but with a whisper of movement. Quiet, calculated, devastating. Austria believes it has time. It does not. As Archduke Charles looks toward Italy and General Mack garrisons Ulm, you sweep like a phantom across the Rhine. Your corps move independently, yet in harmony, like fingers of a single hand. Within weeks, Ulm is surrounded. General Mack never sees it coming. His 60,000 men, trapped, starved, bewildered. No grand battle, no bloody clash, just encirclement, surrender, humiliation. You accept his sword with cold detachment. It is not victory you savor, it is proof. Proof that you are the master of maneuver. But the campaign is not over. The Tsar comes, Alexander of Russia, bringing with him frozen legions and lofty ideals. He joins with Austria for one last stand, confident in numbers, tradition, and God. You do not fear gods. You prepare for Austerlitz. It is December 2nd, 1805, exactly 1 year since your coronation. The sun rises late over Moravia, but when it does, it casts golden rays through the mist. That morning, your men whisper of the son of Austerlitz. You had shown weakness on purpose, baiting the enemy, drawing them into overconfidence. Now you reveal your hand. The battle begins. They strike your right flank, believing it vulnerable. But your line bends, not breaks. Then, like a steel trap, your center lashes out. Soult's corps surges onto the Pratzen heights, cutting the coalition in two. The enemy shatters. What was supposed to be your end becomes their ruin. Thousands drown in the icy lakes. Horses scream. Cannons are abandoned mid-firing. Alexander flees. The Austrians beg for peace. It is more than a victory. It is perfection. You return to Paris not just as emperor, but as legend. The empire expands. Italy, Bavaria, Württemberg, all bend the knee. You crown kings from your marshals, reshaping Europe in your image. But you do not stop. You cannot. For as long as thrones remain, so will war. As long as kings breathe, they will conspire. And as long as you stand, they will fear. The War of the Eagles has only just begun. The smoke of Austerlitz has not yet lifted, but you are already shaping the ashes. Austria staggers. The Holy Roman Empire, that ancient skeleton propped up by tradition and ceremony, crumbles before your breath. You do not just defeat empires, you race them. With the Treaty of Pressburg, you redraw the map with ink and fire. Bavaria and Württemberg swell with new titles and lands, not as enemies but as allies, clients. Your clients. The Confederation of the Rhine is born, and with it a new European order, yours. In Paris, statues rise and newspapers sing. You are hailed not just as conqueror, but as lawgiver. Your code. Napoleon spreads like wildfire through annexed lands and allied states. A legal revolution, rational and secular, precise like the columns of your army. It is not merely policy. It is your immortality in ink. You crush feudal privilege with the same ease you once shattered Austrian lines. Roads are built, schools opened, Jews emancipated, serfdom abolished. Beneath the iron heel rides a strange kind of justice. But you do not mistake reform for peace is fragile and Europe is wide. In 1806, Prussia stirs. Arrogant, slow, bound by dreams of Frederick the Great, it underestimates you. While you maneuver, they hesitate. While you concentrate force, they march blindly forward. You break them. At Jena and Auerstedt, 2 battles fought in a single day, you obliterate their illusions. The Prussian army, once feared, becomes a tale of the past. You stride into Berlin beneath arches that once crowned kings. You take their symbols and recast them. You make them yours. But Prussia is not your only target. You march east again, into the frozen bloodlands of Poland. Russia awaits. The mud sucks at your boots, the snow blinds your scouts. But still you advance. Your army adapts, suffers, persists. At Eylau in 1807, the earth freezes. The battle becomes nightmare, a deadlock of horror. Tens of thousands perish in a white void. The Grande Armée bleeds, but it does not break, and you do not retreat. Because you understand something your enemies do not. Victory is not always glory. Sometimes victory is endurance. Later that year at Friedland, you crush the Russians with brutal efficiency. The Tsar can no longer deny your supremacy. And so, on a raft in the middle of the Niemen River, you meet Alexander face to face. 2 emperors, 2 worlds. The Treaty of Tilsit is born not of love, but of recognition. You divide Europe between you like ancient gods. The West is yours. The East is his, for now. You return to Paris triumphant. But this triumph is not measured in battles. It is measured in silence. Austria is quiet. Prussia is broken. Russia bows. Britain remains, yes, but it is alone, adrift across the waves. You are now not merely the master of France. You are the master of Europe, but mastery demands more than conquest. You build an empire of roads and prefects, codes and clocks. You seed French institutions across the continent, schools in Naples, conscription in Warsaw, civil law in the Rhineland. You speak not only with armies now, but with systems. Europe does not simply fear you, it runs on you. But deep within that machine, gears grind, reforms breed resistance, allies simmer with resentment, conquered peoples murmur in cellars and sanctuaries. Even in France, where your star still blazes, there are those who ask, how long can one man hold the sky? And you, do you ask it too? No, not yet. Your gaze turns elsewhere, because one power remains unbent. One thorn remains in your side. Across the sea, behind wooden walls and ocean spray, Britain watches. It resists your armies. It funds your enemies. It dares to mock your order from the safety of the waves. And so you decide to strike, not with cannons but with hunger. You close the ports. You blockade the continent. You build the continental system, an economic wall designed to strangle the British lion. But walls leak. Merchants grumble. Smugglers thrive. And still, British ships roam free. You begin to understand Europe is a land of swords, but Britain is a sea of shadows, and the sea does not yield. Still you persist, you plan, you adjust. For the moment, your throne rests on marble and steel, but in its foundation cracks begin to form, fine and hairline, invisible to the cheering crowds, yet none dare speak it aloud, because the eagle still flies, and its talons are not yet dull. Spain, a land of sun and shadows, of ancient pride and hidden fire. At first you see it as an afterthought, a pawn in the game, a weak kingdom bloated by old bloodlines and inert traditions. The Spanish monarchy stumbles through incompetence and intrigue. Charles IV, his scheming wife and the detested Godoy, a farce disguised as royalty. You offer to help. In 1808, under the guise of alliance, you send troops. The Spanish throne is seized, the Bourbon king deposed. You install your brother Joseph, docile, intelligent, loyal. Paris approves. Madrid is silent. For a moment it seems easy. Then the earth shifts beneath your boots. The people rise, not armies but peasants, priests, students, beggars. They strike with knives in alleys, with stones from rooftops. They ambush convoys. They poison wells. Entire villages vanish into the hills only to return with torches and rage. It is not war. It is something older, something darker. Guerrilla, a word born in Spain, now branded into your legacy. Your marshals falter. Cities must be retaken again and again. Even Madrid trembles. The enemy is not one front. It is everywhere, in every street, every shadow. You crush the resistance in blood, but it only feeds the fire. Then Britain intervenes. Wellesley, soon to be Wellington, lands in Portugal. He is cautious, disciplined, relentless. And unlike others, he does not fear you. He bleeds you not in grand battles, but in attrition, ambush, and terrain. You send general after general, some win, most fail. The peninsula becomes a vortex, sucking in men, gold, and time. And worse still, it gives birth to myth. The myth that you can be resisted, that the eagle can bleed. Your enemies watch. Austria, licking its wounds from Austerlitz, stirs again. In 1809, it strikes while you are distracted. You must march east once more, this time with less certainty. At Aspern-Essling, you suffer your first true check. The Danube defies you. Bridges collapse. The Austrians stand firm. You lose your friend Lannes, and for the first time, death feels personal. But you do not break. You regroup. At Wagram, you crush Austria again, but it is no longer effortless. The cost is high, the glory feels muted. Still, diplomacy resumes. To bind Austria to your new order, you take a bride, not for love, but for legacy. You divorce Josephine, the woman who once knelt before your crown, and marry Marie-Louise, daughter of the Habsburgs. A new alliance, a new heir. A son is born, the King of Rome. You believe perhaps that this child is the key to permanence, that through him, your empire will not only endure, it will transcend you. But while the cradle rocks in Paris, Spain burns, the Peninsular War drags on, a drain, with no bottom. British forces gain ground. The French retreat, slowly, inexorably. You no longer command it personally. Your focus has shifted elsewhere, to the east, to the Tsar, to a campaign so vast it eclipses even Spain. But the lessons of Iberia follow you like ghosts. You have learned this. Empires are not undone in great battles alone. They erode in bleeding hills, in peasant knives, in forgotten valleys where the sun sets red. The Peninsular War teaches Europe that your empire, for all its might, is not invincible, that under the marble there are cracks, that fire once lit in the hearts of a people cannot be crowned or commanded, and for the first time, the eagle looks behind, not in fear, but in doubt. You have crowned yourself. You have redrawn the map of Europe. You have outwitted popes and kings, humbled emperors, and forged a dynasty from your very breath. But still, there is one land unconquered. Russia. At Tilsit, you stood beside Tsar Alexander, brothers. In ambition, you split Europe like two Caesars. But alliances built on ego decay quickly. The Tsar reopens his ports to British trade, undermines your continental system, whispers with Vienna and London. You will not be defied. So, in 1812, you raise the greatest army the world has ever seen. Over 600,000 men. Germans, Poles, Italians, Spaniards, Dutch, all march under the Eagle banner. The Grande Armée, a colossus. You do not merely invade, you make a statement, a march to compel history. You cross the Niemen in June. The Russian steppes stretch before you, vast, unknowable, endless. The enemy retreats, burning fields, poisoning wells. No decisive battle, no surrender. Just emptiness and ash. Still, you press on. At Borodino, the bear finally claws back. A titanic clash. Over 70,000 casualties. You take the field, but not their will. Russia does not break. It only recedes. Then on September 14th, you reach your prize. Moscow. It is not a capital. It is a symbol. You expect supplication, treaties, a kneeling czar. Instead, the city is eerily silent, abandoned. Then fire, explosions, smoke. Russians have torched their own city. You wait 5 weeks. No peace comes. The silence in the snow becomes unbearable. And then, the cold. It is not merely winter. It is a force of nature. A punishment from Olympus. Horses die standing. Men freeze mid-step. Food vanishes. Frostbite blackens skin like plague. The wind sings a requiem of the damned. The retreat begins. It's not a march. It is a collapse. Cossacks harass your flanks. Wolves follow your columns. Cannons are abandoned. Men devour their dead. Bridges shatter beneath ice. The Berezina becomes a graveyard. Of your 600,000, barely 100,000 limp home. It is not a defeat. It is an annihilation. In Paris, the myth begins to unravel. Whispers turn to murmurs. Allies grow restless, enemies rally, Prussia rises, Austria shifts. Britain sharpens its blade, and yet even now you are not finished. Even now, with snow clinging to your coat and death etched in your eyes, you rebuild. A new army, new campaigns. But something has changed, not just in Europe, in you, the march through. Russia has stolen something intangible, a certainty, a spark, perhaps even destiny itself. You are no longer the rising star, the genius untouched by failure. You are a man, a titan, yes, but a mortal one. And as 1813 dawns, with Europe turning against you in unison, you will be forced to face the truth. Empires forged in fire can be consumed. By it, but you do not yield, because in your heart, even as the world turns, the fire still burns. And so you march again. Snow still clings to your boots. The ghosts of Moscow march beside you. But France demands a miracle, and you, Napoleon, have never lacked ambition. It is now 1813. Your empire still sprawls from the Atlantic to the Elbe. but its seams strain. The Russian disaster echoes across Europe. From London to Vienna, the old powers smell blood. They sense the mortal wound, and so, for the first time, they unite, all of them. Britain, Russia, Prussia, Sweden, and soon Austria. A new coalition. The sixth, stronger than any before. Not merely a pact of states, but a crusade against you. You are not surprised. You gather what remains and forge anew. A fresh Grande Armée rises. Young conscripts, battle-hardened veterans, and shattered survivors of Russia. You rebuild as only you can. With urgency, genius, and fire. Spring breaks over Saxony. You move first, fast, brutal, decisive. At Lutzen and Bautzen you strike with fury. The enemy reels. Once again your name sends tremors through the thrones of Europe. They are reminded, the emperor still commands lightning, but the spark has dimmed. At Dresden you deal a brilliant blow, but it is fleeting. Elsewhere your marshals falter. Oudinot fails at Berlin. Ney is driven back. Bavaria defects. The tide shifts, and then Leipzig, the Battle of the Nations, October 1813. Nearly 500,000 men clash. French, Prussians, Austrians, Russians. 3 days of thunder, smoke, and death. You fight like a wounded god. Your men bleed for you with fanatical loyalty. But the world is simply too large now. The bridge at Leipzig collapses. Thousands drown. Your army shatters. You retreat. The eagle's wings are tattered. Europe cheers. But France is not yet lost, because you, Napoleon, are not yet done. The roads are mud, the air heavy with defeat, but your will remains iron. It is now the winter of 1813 into 1814. You retreat through Germany, harried by enemies on every side. Yet even in flight you punish them. At Hanau you smash, through Bavarian lines. Your army may be bloodied, but it is not broken. You reach France, your homeland. The soil that bore you now drinks the blood of foreign boots. The Rhine no longer shields the empire. The Allies cross it, hundreds of thousands. Strong, like a tide seeking to drown your dream, Paris braces, and you? You do not hide behind walls. You ride once more at the head of your army, gathering remnants, recalling veterans, rallying boys still learning to shave. What you lack in numbers, you supply in brilliance. You become fire again. In January 1814, the campaign of France begins. You strike with surgical speed. At Brienne, you clash with old schoolmates now turned foes. Blücher and Schwarzenberg. They are stunned by your audacity. Then comes the 6 days campaign. February. In 6 days, you fight 4 battles. Champaubert, Montmirail, Château-Thierry, Vauchamp. Each a masterpiece. You slice through enemy lines like a blade. The Allies stagger, uncertain. Reports go back to Vienna, to Berlin, to London. Napoleon is more dangerous than ever. But it is not enough. Their numbers are too great. For every 1,000 you kill, 10,000 more arrive. Each prince of Europe sends their best. They are not just fighting an army. They are exorcising a myth. Still, you fight. At Montereau, you hurl them back. At Troyes, you nearly divide them. But they no longer chase victory, they chase you. And behind you lies Paris. You plead with your marshals, let me strike Vienna, let me turn east and force peace. But they hesitate. They are tired. France is tired. Your enemies know this. They bypass you, a flanking maneuver, a gamble. They march straight for the heart. Paris, March 1814. You are in Fontainebleau, only days from the capital, your boots still caked with mud from Montereau. You ride harder than ever. You believe, you must believe, that Paris will hold. But Paris is not a fortress. It is a city of light, of art, of revolutions. It has endured storms before, but never like this. From the north and east they come. Blücher, the Prussian hammer, crosses the Marne. Schwarzenberg, the Austrian serpent, wins through Burgundy. Russian boots tramp over French soil for the first time since the snows of 1812. More than 100,000 men. Marshals, Marmont and Mortier are left to defend the capital with what scraps remain. Students, volunteers, broken veterans. The Parisians dig trenches in the vineyards of Montmartre. Women carry muskets. Children sharpen pikes. The city prepares not for defense but for sacrifice. On March 30th, the battle begins. Cannon fire echoes off the domes of the Invalides. Smoke shrouds the Seine. Barricades fall. Blood runs through the cobbled alleys of Belleville. The Allies fight not only against soldiers, but against memory, against a city that once cheered the revolution, once crowned you in gold, once became the beating heart of a dream, but it cannot stand. Not forever, and you are too far. You ride toward the guns, but the news travels faster. Messages intercept you at Juvisy. Paris has capitulated. They have surrendered. Talleyrand, that ever-slippery fox, has already opened the gates. The Senate convenes not to protect you, but to erase you. Already they speak of restoring order, of welcoming the Bourbons back to the throne. Your son, the King of Rome, is hidden behind palace walls. Josephine is far ill, weeping for you, and in Paris, the white flags fly. You dismount in silence. The road ends here, or so it seems. Fontainebleau, April 1814. The corridors of the old hunting lodge echo with footsteps. Your marshals, your secretaries, your silence. You pace the tiled floors alone. The tapestries whisper of kings long gone. The mirrors reflect a face gaunt with fatigue, but still burning with purpose. You are no longer surrounded by cheering crowds or golden thrones. Now, only decisions remain. Your marshals arrive. Ney, MacDonald, Lefebvre, Oudinot. Men you lifted from obscurity. Men who once rode through fire for you. But today their eyes are downcast. Their uniforms are immaculate, but their voices shake. They plead with you. Sire, it is over. You listen. You do not interrupt. You hear them speak of the hopelessness, the overwhelming numbers, the fury of a continent turned against you. And then Ney speaks plainly. The army will not march, sire, not anymore. They want peace. For a moment, silence reigns. You feel the dagger, but you nod. They are right. You retreat to your study. Alone, you sit beneath the painted ceilings, beneath the clock that ticks louder than ever. And there, with a pen trembling in your hand, you sign. I renounce the throne for myself and my heirs. The words bleed into paper, but the pain lies deeper. Not because you lose power, but because you lose the dream. The revolution, reborn through you, dies not with a bang, but with your signature. But you will not go quietly. You attempt suicide. That night in your chambers, you swallow the poison long kept in a locket around your neck. A last gesture of Roman defiance, but it fails, either too old or too weak. You survive. You wake to dawn, coughing and sweating, and realize fate is not finished with you. Soon the terms arrive. The victors grant you a title. Emperor still, but of what? Of a rock in the Mediterranean, Elba. They offer you a tiny kingdom, a mockery, a gilded prison with 600 men and a broken dream. You accept it. Not because you surrender, but because you wait. You embrace your son one last time. Kiss Josephine's portrait. Mount your carriage. On April 20th, before your faithful old guard, you step into history. Soldiers of my old guard, I bid you farewell. Voices break. Tears flow. You press your hand to your chest. If I have failed you, forgive me. I go, but the memory of your courage will never leave me. The drums roll, the gates open. You are no longer Emperor of the French, but you are still Napoleon, and history has not written its final page. The sea is silent save for the wind tugging at your tricolor flag. You stand at the prow of the brig Inconstant, your eyes fixed on the horizon. Behind you lies Elba, your cage, your exile. Ahead lies France, your destiny. It is March the 1st, 1815. Less than a year has passed since your abdication. You have heard the rumors, the unrest, the disappointment with the Bourbons. France is not healed. France is restless. And so you return. No grand army, no fleets, just 1,100 men, your guard, and a name that still thunders through every village, every valley. You land at Golfe Juan and march north. With every step, the earth trembles, not from your boots, but from the whispers that spread ahead of you. The emperor has returned. The royalists send troops to stop you. You meet them on the road to Grenoble. You walk alone into their line, your coat open, your chest bare. If any of you would shoot your emperor, here I am. They do not fire. Instead, they cry, "Vive l'Empereur!" Regiments dissolve before you. Officers abandon Louis. Cities open their gates. In 20 days, without a shot fired, you enter Paris. The king flees. France rises to greet its fallen eagle. But the world will not forgive resurrection. The Seventh Coalition forms at once. Britain, Prussia, Austria, Russia. They do not see a reborn leader, they see a threat reborn. And you do not wait. You strike first. You march north into Belgium, into history. Your army is smaller than before, but sharp. Hardened veterans, loyal to the last breath. You know your enemies are divided. If you move fast, you can crush them one by one before they unite. You meet the Prussians at Ligny. June 16th. Victory. You beat Blücher. The old Prussian lion stumbles. But at Quatre Bras, Ney falters against the British. Still, you press forward. Then comes June 18th, the field of Waterloo, the last gamble. The morning of June 18th, 1815, breaks gray and wet. Rain lashes the Belgian countryside. Mud clings to boots. Cannon wheels sink into the mire. And yet you ride the lines, cloak soaked, eyes sharp. This is your last chance. You feel it. Not just a battle, but a reckoning. Across the ridgeline stands the Duke of Wellington, a soldier as cool and methodical as he is cautious. Behind him, the British army, dug in, quiet, waiting. Somewhere beyond the woods to the east, the Prussians of Blücher regroup, bloodied but alive. You must strike before they arrive. You deploy your forces with the eye of a master. Infantry in columns, cavalry behind, artillery crowned atop ridges. Your Imperial Guard waits, untouched, the blade still sheathed. Midday comes. The ground begins to dry. At Hougoumont, La Haye-Sainte, and Papelotte, the battle breaks open. You hurl divisions at the British center and flanks. Each time they hold. Each time you adjust. Every decision is precise, deliberate. You do not panic, you trust in time and pressure. Then misunderstanding strikes. Marshal Ney, seeing an opening where none exists, launches a mass cavalry charge, unsupported by infantry or cannon. A sea of horseflesh crashes into British squares, once, twice, 3 times. The losses are staggering, but still you hold your hand. Late afternoon, you strike with the Imperial Guard, your finest troops, your last card. They advance up the slope, drums pounding, standards waving. They are invincible, or so the world believes. But this day has no respect for legend. From the smoke, British volleys rip through their ranks. The guard staggers, a moment's hesitation, then a cry breaks across the ridge. La garde recule. The guard is retreating. Not even at Moscow had they broken. Panic spreads like fire. The lines collapse. Your army, once a blade of steel, melts into chaos. Cannons abandoned, flags trampled, men cry out not for glory, but for their mothers. You watch it unfold from a small rise. One by one, your marshals ride to you. It is over. You do not weep. You nod. You turn your horse, the setting sun gilding your profile in bronze. The empire ends, not with thunder, but with a whisper carried by broken footsteps and shattered dreams. Back. In Paris, the silence is deafening. Within weeks, you abdicate again. But there is no Elba this time. This time, they send you to the edge of the world, St. Helena, a rock in the Atlantic. Wind-swept, isolated, guarded by an empire. You live in Longwood House, surrounded by memory and mist. Years pass. You write, reflect, argue with shadows. You walk the same path each day, less emperor, more ghost. and yet the world remembers. In every corner of Europe, men whisper of you. Still, in paintings, books, even in the fear of kings, your presence lingers. In 1821, as your body fails, you gaze once more toward the eastern horizon. You speak your last word, not of battles, not of glory, but France, armée, tête d'armée, France, army, head of the army. You die not as an exile, you die as Napoleon. St. Helena, the name alone evokes isolation. A jagged rock flung into the Atlantic, closer to oblivion than to Europe. Here, on this wind-beaten outpost of empire, you are kept under watch by those who fear not the man, but the myth he could become again. You pace the damp corridors of Longwood House. Its ceilings are low, its walls moldy, its windows warped by ocean salt. Every creak of the floorboards mocks your past grandeur. Gone are the golden halls of the Tuileries. Gone is the thunder of the Guard. Now your empire is made of books, memories, and silence. But you are not idle. You write. Day after day, you dictate. To Las Cases, to Montholon, to Gourgaud. Memoirs, letters, reflections. Each word a sword stroke against time. You recast history not as it was, but as it must be remembered. You shape the narrative of the Republic, the Revolution, the Empire, with yourself as its inevitable consequence. Others would call it vanity. You call it clarity. In this exile, you are not Napoleon the general. You are Napoleon the historian, the philosopher, the myth maker. And the myth begins to take shape. Even as the British watch you like a hawk, even as they clip your correspondence and censor your guests, whispers spread. Smugglers and sailors carry your words back to Europe. Secret prints of your portrait circulate in Paris. In cafes and salons, old veterans toast quietly in your name. You, the prisoner, become a firebrand again, igniting imaginations across the continent. Not as a tyrant, as the Titan betrayed. Your body weakens. Malaria, ulcers, liver rot, call it what they will. You see the slow collapse in the mirror. Your gait stiffens, your appetite fails. Some say the British poison you. Others say it's grief. Perhaps most truthfully, it is time. But your mind remains sharp, and so you ask for maps, not old ones. You spread them across your table. Austerlitz, Jena, Borodino, Wagram. You trace the paths of your armies with trembling fingers, as if willing time to run backward. You speak to your companions not of illness, but of destiny. You say, if I had died at Austerlitz, I would be immortal. But you did not. And so now, you seek something greater. You seek to outlive death, not in flesh, but in flame. France, meanwhile, forgets and remembers. Louis XVIII sits on the throne, bloated with Bourbon indifference. The tricolor is gone. The revolution is disavowed. The empire is taboo. But the people remember. Veterans hide medals beneath their coats. Mothers name their sons after your marshals. In secret societies, young idealists speak of Napoleonic ideals, of order born from chaos, of greatness earned, not inherited. You are gone from the throne, but not from the world. You cool are an idea now, and ideas, unlike men, do not die so easily. You are gone. May 5th, 1821. The Atlantic wind howls outside as your breath grows shallow. Your final words, France, the army, the head of the army, linger in the air like incense. Las Casas weeps. Montholon clutches your hand. The watchers send word across the ocean. The eagle has fallen. But the world you leave behind is not still. In Paris, the Bourbon court sighs in cautious relief. They pray that history can now be sealed shut with wax and ceremony. They bury your name beneath layers of protocol. Your statues are hidden, your songs silenced, your victories rebranded as calamities. And yet, your absence is louder than your presence ever was. Across France, whispers grow louder. Not among kings or diplomats, but among tailors, teachers, soldiers, farmers. In crowded tenements and smoky taverns, your image is spoken with reverence. You were the man who rose from nothing. You made greatness seem possible. You dared to seize the lightning of history. And now that lightning crackles in your wake. Your brother Joseph lives quietly in America. Lucien writes poetry in Italy. Eugene remains a loyal noble under foreign flags. They carry your name, but not your fire. They are not heirs. They are echoes. No, your true heir is something else entirely. It is longing, a deep collective ache for certainty, order, and glory. And in that ache, a seed begins to stir. Europe too is uneasy. Austria, Prussia, Russia, Britain. They gathered in Vienna to redraw the continent, to erase the scars you carved into its skin. Borders shift, monarchs rise, treaties are signed, but peace proves delicate. The world you shattered cannot be rebuilt with parchments alone. Nationalism simmers beneath the surface. Revolutions stir in Italy, in Spain, in Poland. Your example, dangerous, magnetic, haunts every throne. What if another man rises? What if ambition returns, clothed in flags and fervor? They thought they buried you. Instead, they planted you. And from the soil of your myth, movements begin to sprout. Not in your name, not always, but your image. Back in France, a child watches a group of veterans march past. They carry canes instead of muskets, but their backs are straight, their eyes burning with memory. One of them whispers, "I served under him, at Wagram." The boy's eyes widen. He doesn't understand the battles, the politics, or the proclamations, but he sees something in their faces, a pride untouched by kings. That boy grows up, he studies maps, reads memoirs, learns the songs the Bourbons tried to ban, and when the time is right, he too reaches for the mantle you left behind. His name is Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, your nephew, your shadow, your second coming. The year is 1848. Europe is burning again. Barricades rise in Paris, crowds chant in the streets, monarchs tremble. The old world, patched together after your fall, is tearing at the seams. And into this storm walks a name, not a man, not yet, but a memory. Bonaparte, Louis Napoleon, returns from exile not as a soldier, but as a figure cloaked in myth. He is no general. He has never commanded an army, but he carries the echo of your legend. And in this age of uncertainty, the echo is enough. He stands for election as President of the Second Republic. The people vote, not for him, but for you. His victory is overwhelming. You are resurrected through bloodline, through dream, through hunger for greatness. Yet Louis Napoleon is not you. Where you carved destiny with the saber, he maneuvers with masks. He is cautious, calculating. A shadow politician, wearing an imperial face. But he understands the crowd. He knows the symphony of symbols. He knows that France does not want a president. France wants an emperor. And so, in 1852, he stages his own coronation. He does not ascend like you did, with thunder and revolution in your veins. He rises carefully, behind plebiscites, through proclamations, under the guise of stability. He calls himself Napoleon III, and for a time, it works. The Second Empire begins. Paris transforms. Haussmann tears down medieval alleys and rebuilds with broad boulevards. The city gleams like never before. Railways stretch across France. Industry rises. Colonies grow. Prosperity surges, for some. But beneath the marble, cracks form. Napoleon III seeks glory abroad, just as you did. But his campaigns falter. In Mexico, he installs a puppet emperor, Maximilian, only to see him executed by firing squad. In Italy, he is praised as a liberator but feared as a manipulator. He walks a delicate line between ambition and incompetence. Then comes Prussia. In 1870, provoked by Bismarck's cunning diplomacy and desperate to reclaim lost prestige, Napoleon III declares war. He believes in a swift, victorious campaign, just as you once did. But the world has changed. The Prussians are modern, unified, and ruthless. In weeks, they crush the French at Sedan. Napoleon III is captured, humiliated. Paris erupts in fury. The empire collapses in a blink. You lived through defeat and still forged legend. He, your heir in name, leaves behind only embarrassment. The Bonapartist flame flickers, and France once again searches for itself in the rubble of empire. But the people do not forget you, not truly. Your body, once cast into exile, is brought back to France in solemn ceremony. The coffin floats down the Seine, beneath mournful bells, beneath a sky that remembers. You rest now in Les Invalides, beneath golden domes and reverent silence. Yet your soul, your idea, your shadow, that still walks among them. You were buried but not forgotten. In death you became more than a man, you became a symbol. And symbols do not rot, they resonate. Across France your image blooms in every form imaginable. Streets, cities, schools, and statues bear your name. Soldiers whisper your strategies. Politicians mimic your charisma. Artists paint you astride white horses, cast in marble, draped in glory. Children memorize your maxims. Even your hat becomes legend. The Napoleonic Code, etched into law, outlives kings and coups. Your legal vision, the rights of man, the clarity of order becomes the backbone of nations, not just in France, but across Europe, Latin America, the Middle East. Your name no longer belongs to history. It belongs to mythology. Books are written not just to recount your deeds, but to interpret them. Historians dissect every gesture, every breath. Did you plan everything? Did you believe in the revolution or merely use it? Were you a tyrant, a genius, a hero, a monster? You become all of them. The romantics adore you. Victor Hugo calls you a Prometheus chained not by gods but by jealous men. Chateaubriand, your foe in life, can't help but admire your fire. Delacroix paints revolutions inspired by your storm. Even Beethoven, who scratched your name from a symphony in disgust, still carried your thunder in every note. You were not perfect, but you were never boring. And in the vacuum of ordinary leaders, you grow taller each year. Every politician who follows is measured against your silhouette. Some kneel to it, some run from it, none escape it. In times of crisis, they invoke you. In 1914, French generals plan offensives by quoting your tactics. In 1940, as the German Blitzkrieg rolls over France, Hitler demands to see your tomb. He stands before your sarcophagus in silent awe, not of your body, but of your legend. You, the general he could never outmatch in spirit. And later, in the ashes of war, Charles de Gaulle, the Gaullist France, invokes you not as conqueror, but as visionary. You linger in every military school, every government debate, every thunderclap of revolution. The left claims your roots in the Republic. The right claims your order, your discipline. The people claim your fire. You are used. You are abused. But you are always present. And in the world beyond France, you are studied like scripture. Your campaigns are poured over in West Point, Sandhurst, Moscow, Beijing. Generals in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan read your maneuvers, hoping to bottle a little of your lightning. Even in defeat you teach. Even in exile you command. Even in silence you speak. Now your shadow stretches over centuries. You once said, "What? Is history but a fable agreed upon?" Perhaps, but in your case the fable became flesh, and then became immortal. To study you, Napoleon, is to study ourselves, because you were not simply a figure of your time. You were a mirror, one that reflects the dreams, the fears, the contradictions of humanity. You began as a revolutionary, born in the fire of liberty, equality, fraternity. And yet you crowned yourself emperor. In you, we see the eternal tension between idealism and ambition, between freedom and order. You were a man of merit, who rose through talent and vision. Yet you built a dynasty, installed brothers on thrones, and tightened your grip with iron. We admire your rise and question your reign. You promised peace through strength, and yet your wars consumed a generation. You brought down tyrants, then became what you had toppled. You are the contradiction we all wrestle with, that the very qualities that elevate us may also undo us. And still, we are drawn to you. Why? Because you are a story we want to believe in. A story of transformation, of brilliance forged from obscurity, of reshaping the world through force of will. You did not inherit power, you seized it. You sculpted your destiny from nothing but intellect and fire. In a world often ruled by mediocrity, you were excellence incarnate. You dared, you dreamed, you acted, and we admire that, because deep down we wish to do the same. Yet your story also warns us. It warns us how genius can become obsession, how order can become oppression, how the line between savior and tyrant is thin and always shifting. Your legacy is not clean, it is not simple, but that is why it endures, because we too are not clean, not simple, not perfect. You said once, a leader is a dealer in hope, and perhaps that is your truest essence. Not conquest, not empire, but hope. Hope that one person, guided by vision, can reshape the world. That from chaos can emerge order. That the impossible can be dared and achieved. In you, we see both our highest potential and our deepest dangers, and that is why your story will never end. Not truly. And so, we return to that lonely island, St. Helena. The wind still howls across its jagged rocks. The sea still beats the shore like the ticking of eternity. And there, in a small damp house on Longwood Plain, you spend your final years. Your days are not spent in glory, but in reflection. You dictate. You revise history. You polish your myth like a general tending to his sword. Every anecdote, every account, every letter, crafted not merely to remember but to outlive. You know what most men do not. Death is not the end, not if you seize control of the narrative. And so, as your body weakens, your legend grows stronger. You pace the floor like it's a battlefield. You debate with shadows. You speak to the past and argue with the future. Your guards watch from afar, never sure if they are witnessing the death of a man or the birth of an idea. On May 5th, 1821, you breathe your last, but the silence does not last long. Across Europe, the ripples begin, whispers in Parisian cafes, salutes among soldiers, flowers left at empty statues, rumors that you've escaped again, escaped death itself, that you will return like Arthur from Avalon when France needs you most. The British bury you beneath a weeping willow, but they cannot bury the myth. 19 years later, France comes calling. Your ashes are brought home, across stormy seas and reverent harbors to rest beneath the golden dome of Les Invalides. Paris lines the streets in mourning and awe, and even your enemies cannot help but feel it. Something more than power past, something eternal. Today you lie not only in stone, you lie in memory, in statues, in paintings, in the rhythm of military marches, in the names etched on monuments and street corners across continents. You lie in books and debates, in classrooms and war colleges, in the speeches of revolutionaries and the nightmares of kings. You are invoked as hero, as villain, as genius, as tyrant, as all and none. You are a prism through which history refracts, and in that kaleidoscope of triumph and ruin, your legend marches on. Not every man leaves behind a kingdom, but you left behind an empire of echoes. And even now, when we whisper your name, it is not merely remembrance, it is summoning. Napoleon. The guns have long since fallen silent, and yet, Egypt does not forget. The desert still whispers of the strange army that came with cannons and curiosity, with bayonets and books. The French have departed, their ships sunk or scattered, their banners torn by time. But their shadow lingers, etched into the soil, into the stones, into the minds of those who inherited the sand. You, Napoleon, are gone, entombed in Paris beneath golden domes. But the echo of your campaign remains like the ghost of a pharaoh, neither fully dead nor truly alive. Egypt is no longer a battlefield. It is a battleground of memory. The locals speak of the time the French came as if it were yesterday. Stories of the tall Corsican general who stared into the eyes of the Sphinx, of battles fought in burning heat and nights spent mapping stars, of pyramids that watched empires rise and fall. Again, what you brought to Egypt, intentionally or not, was more than conquest. You brought disruption. You shattered the Ottoman hold, exposed the Mamluks as brittle relics, and left behind a vacuum into which new powers would rush. The very land beneath your boots began to shift, like tectonic plates grinding toward modernity. Muhammad Ali saw it first. The Albanian officer, once obscure, rises from the wake of your departure like a phoenix from the ashes. He sees what you do. Egypt is no mere province. It is a keystone, a gateway between continents, cultures, and futures. And so, he begins his own revolution, not with liberty, equality, fraternity, but with gunpowder, silk, and strategy. He builds an army in your image, a state molded in steel and steam. He imports knowledge like you imported cannon. You have been gone only a few years, but already the world shifts to the rhythm of your legacy. Cairo changes. The old city, with its winding alleys and domed mosques, now hums with strange new tensions. French architecture creeps in. Scientific terms enter the Arabic tongue. A new generation of Egyptians grows up not just in the shadow of minarets, but in the glow of enlightenment. Your savants, those ragged scholars who toiled under musket fire, have left more than their notes. They have left a mirror, one that shows Egypt what it once was, and what it might yet become. From the ashes of your failed conquest, a strange renaissance begins. Slowly, painfully, but undeniably. Books are translated. Printing presses churn. Old manuscripts are uncovered and given new light. The science of the ancients, buried under centuries of dust, is brought back to life by the very foreigners who once desecrated tombs. Is it irony? Is it justice? Or is it simply history's way of resurrecting what refuses to stay buried? Meanwhile, in France, the Egypt you once touched is romanticized beyond recognition. Painters depict you standing heroically before the pyramids. Writers conjure you as a modern Caesar, an Alexander reborn in desert sands. They do not see the heat, the plague, the defeats. They see glory. They see mystique. They see Egypt not as it is, but as you made it seem, a land of eternal monuments and secret wisdom, waiting for the enlightened West to awaken it. Thus begins a new form of conquest, not by cannon, but by image. The Egyptomania spreads like wildfire. Obelisks are dragged to Paris. Sphinxes appear on fountains. Hieroglyphs adorn boudoirs. You may have lost the campaign, but you won the imagination of Europe and Egypt itself. Caught between myth and memory, it watches silently, waiting. But history is patient. The sands that buried pharaohs will bury other empires too. And just as your footprints faded from the dunes, others will come. British uniforms, German archaeologists, American tourists, each claiming to rediscover a land that has never been lost. But none will shape it quite as you did. Because you did not come simply to conquer. You came to project a vision, one born of revolution and ambition, of blood and books. And that vision still lingers like bones in the sand. You marched with muskets but also with microscopes. This, more than anything, was your strangest act. Not just bringing war to the Nile, but bringing science. You didn't merely seek to conquer Egypt's people. You sought to conquer its past. And for that, you needed more than soldiers. You needed scholars, engineers, mathematicians, naturalists, orientalists, architects. They arrived in dusty boots and sun-scorched coats, scribbling feverishly in notebooks while cannonballs flew overhead. These savants, as you called them, were not warriors. Yet in time, they would achieve what your army could not. They would change the way the world saw Egypt, forever. It begins with documentation. The savants fan across the country like a swarm of intellectual locusts. They measure temples in Thebes, sketch ruined statues in Memphis, and trace hieroglyphs with trembling fingers, unsure of their meaning, but certain of their worth. They dissect mummies, catalog flora, count birds. They chart the Nile's flood patterns with geometric precision. They write treatises on irrigation, on architecture, on insects. It's not about plunder, it's about understanding. This is the birth of Egyptology, and it starts not in silence but in the roar of revolution. No previous conqueror had ever thought to preserve what they conquered. But you, ever the child of the Enlightenment, dared to ask, what can we learn from the fallen? And so the savants ask questions the world had stopped asking for centuries. Who built the pyramids? What did the gods of Egypt mean? Where did the knowledge of the ancients go? These are not just academic puzzles. They are keys to something larger. To Western identity, to modernity itself. Then the description de l'Egypte begins to take form. The grandest publishing project France has ever seen. Perhaps the greatest Europe will attempt in the 19th century. Dozens of volumes. Thousands of illustrations, engravings the size of tables, texts in flowing French and rigid Latin. It is less a book than a monument, an intellectual pyramid built not of limestone, but of ink. It will take decades to complete, but when it is done, it will define Egypt in the European mind not as a land of poverty and superstition, but as the cradle of civilization. The description is not impartial. It is not neutral. It is a weapon of cultural conquest. A declaration that says, we did not merely fight here, we revealed the truth of this place. We made it knowable. And yet, even in this arrogance, there is something beautiful. The drawings are exquisite, the notes meticulous. The respect, though filtered through colonial lenses, is real. The French savants may have worked under occupation, but many fell in love with Egypt. Some never returned home. The sands changed them. But there is one artifact, one single stone, that towers above all others, the Rosetta Stone. You did not understand. When you found it, your scholars knew it was special, but the key had not yet been turned. Still, its discovery will ignite a fire that burns for generations. When Jean-François Champollion finally deciphers it in 1822, long after your death, it will open the doors to 3,000 years of forgotten history. Hieroglyphs, once mystical gibberish, will become readable. Pharaohs will regain their names, tombs will tell their tales, and it will all trace back to your campaign, to the moment when your soldiers stumbled upon a stone in the ruins of Fort Julian, near Rosetta. You didn't win, Egypt, but in this you triumphed. You resurrected a civilization not by sword but by scholarship. This is your paradox. You brought war but also wonder. You plundered, yet preserved. You failed as a general, but succeeded as a catalyst, a spark that lit a fire in the minds of men who would never step foot on a battlefield. Your scholars returned to France with notes, not trophies, with measurements, not myths, with truths, not treasures. And in doing so, they gave Egypt back to the world, not as a fantasy but as history. You left Egypt in disgrace, but the empire did not leave with you. In the vacuum of your ambition, others moved in, cautious at first, then confident. Chief among them, the British. They had watched your failure closely. They had crushed your navy at Aboukir Bay. And now, as you withdrew your troops under humiliating terms, they stepped ashore not just as victors, but as inheritors. Not of your revolution, but of your imperial model. Egypt in the 19th century became a prize in a global game. Game of roots, resources, and rivalries. The British weren't drawn to Egypt for its pyramids or priests. They came for something far more modern, the Suez Canal. This slender waterway, dreamed by the ancients but built by the Frenchman Ferdinand de Lesseps in 1869, connected the Mediterranean to the Red Sea and Europe to India. To control the canal was to control the lifeblood of empire, and so the British came, first as investors, then as advisors, then inevitably as occupiers. In 1882, under the pretext of restoring order during a nationalist uprising, British troops marched into Cairo. They would not leave for 70 years. The British ruled not as pharaohs but as managers. They did not claim divine right nor wear crowns. But they controlled the treasury, dictated agricultural policy, appointed governors, censored the press. They were imperial in everything but name. Unlike your campaign, they came without fanfare. No savants, no manifestos, just accountants and administrators, engineers and infantry. Where you brought revolution and rhetoric, they brought order and balance sheets, but even they could not ignore Egypt's past. The mystique you had reignited, the obsession with tombs, temples, and ancient power, had spread across Europe like wildfire. And so, the British too dug. They excavated ruins, shipped obelisks to London, filled the British Museum with sarcophagi. The colonial hand took Egypt's past piece by piece, claiming not just its cotton, but its cultural soul. And through it all, your ghost lingered, because the truth is, you had started something. The British, for all their restraint and cynicism, walked a path you had opened. They ruled Egypt not simply as administrators of the present, but as custodians of a mythology you had helped restore. They too imagined Egypt not as a place of peasants and desert tribes, but as a former titan, whose secrets could be unlocked, controlled, even inherited. You had made Egypt visible again to the West, and in doing so, you made it desirable. But not all in Egypt welcomed this inheritance. Even as Britain settled in, a fire smoldered. Educated Egyptians began to ask, why do foreigners own our history? They read your description de l'Egypte, now translated and reprinted. They saw their temples looted, their papyri exported, their names mispronounced in European lecture halls. They asked, who speaks for Egypt? The seeds of nationalism were being dunsen, not with rifles, but with ideas. Ironically, the enlightenment that you carried to Egypt, wrapped in French idealism and cannon fire, was now turning against its own imperial offspring. Soon, a generation of Egyptians would rise not to embrace Europe's vision, but to reclaim their own. But that would come later. For now, the British ruled. The pyramids watched, and your ghost, restless, ambitious, flawed, drifted across the sand, whispering in the ears of scholars and soldiers alike. You had come to Egypt with dreams of glory. You left defeated, but the aftershock of your presence reshaped the land for over a century. You are long gone. Your bones rest in France beneath the golden dome of Les Invalides. But in Egypt something stirs, something you may never have expected. A new generation is rising, and they are not content to be the subjects of history written by outsiders. They are no longer simply the backdrop to your drama, or that of the British, the French, the archaeologists, or the generals. These Egyptians want to tell their own story, in their own voice. At first, the voice is faint, a whisper in salons and schools, in coffee houses and Arabic newspapers. It speaks of pride, not just in Islam or Arab heritage, but in pharaonic Egypt, once seen as pagan, now reborn as a symbol of national strength. It is a radical idea that before Islam, before Rome, before even Greece, Egypt stood as the mother of civilization. That Ramses and Akhenaten and Hatshepsut were not just dead kings, but ancestral giants, whose greatness must be reclaimed. The peasants may still work the same Nile-fed soil, but in the minds of students and poets, a new Egypt is forming. Modern, proud, ancient in roots, but forward in vision. This fire finds its kindling in moments of humiliation. Each time the British tighten their grip, each time foreign archaeologists carry statues abroad, the embers of nationalism glow hotter. By the early 20th century, the flames leap high. In 1919, Egypt erupts in revolt. Men and women pour into the streets. Farmers, clerks, teachers, merchants, all demanding independence, not just from foreign soldiers, but from the foreign narrative, from the idea that Egypt's value lies only in its past, that it is a land to be studied, not one to lead. The revolution fails in military terms. The British remain, though shaken. But something fundamental has changed. For the first time in centuries, Egyptians believe they are the rightful heirs of their own destiny. In schools, children now learn that they are not just Muslims or Arabs, they are descendants of pharaohs. In literature and art, the ancient gods are invoked not as religious figures, but as symbols of sovereignty and endurance. The past is no longer a curiosity, it is a weapon. Pharaonic iconography appears on coins, in propaganda, on monuments. Even the Egyptian flag flirts with ancient imagery. Cleopatra becomes a heroine. Nefertiti a Musi. This fusion of modern nationalism with ancient pride creates a uniquely Egyptian identity. Neither wholly Western nor purely Islamic, but something older and deeper. And you are a ghost haunting the edges of this identity. For while Egyptians reject your imperial motives, they cannot escape the doors you unlocked. Without your invasion, your scholars, your description de l'Égypte, perhaps this pharaonic resurgence never would have found its footing. You gave Egypt's ancient voice a modern echo. Now that echo becomes a shout. But nationalism is not pure. It is co-opted, manipulated, politicized. Egypt's rulers, both kings and revolutionaries, will invoke the pharaohs to justify their own power. Ancient grandeur becomes a mirror in which modern strongmen see their reflection. The ghost of Ramses is reborn in uniforms and parades. Statues rise, so do secret police. And yet, through all the contradictions, one truth remains. Egyptians have reclaimed Egypt. Not fully, not forever, but something irreversible has begun. The West no longer owns the narrative. You no longer set the terms. Your ghost is no longer the only one speaking. You thought you had started something eternal, that your conquest, your scholars, your description de l'Égypte would frame Egypt forever through a European lens. Science, empire, enlightenment. But you did not anticipate the camera, or the cinema, or the broadcast. Egypt would not remain a jewel in academic journals or cabinets of curiosity. It would become something more modern, more mythic, and more dangerous. It begins with a glint of gold. 22. The Valley of the Kings. Howard Carter leans into the sealed doorway of an untouched tomb. Behind him waits Lord Carnarvon, anxious and breathless. Carter chisels through stone and time. A hole opens in history. He peers in, and the modern world meets Tutankhamun. You never found such a prize. None of your generals did. This boy king, a minor ruler in life, becomes in death the single most iconic symbol of ancient Egypt. Gold mask, inlaid gems, untouched splendor. But more than that, the media storm. Newspapers explode. Photos of the treasures run globally. Museums scramble. And for the first time, ancient Egypt is not just studied, it is marketed. Tut fever spreads. Fashion mimics the lotus and cobra. Art Deco architecture borrows columns and glyphs. Children learn the name Tutankhamun before they learn Napoleon. You are no longer the gateway, you are now an afterthought. Hollywood arrives next. In black and white and Technicolor, they rebuild your Egypt, but not for the Sorbonne or Versailles, for audiences in Los Angeles, London, Tokyo, and New York. Mummies walk. Pyramids hide portals. Pharaohs curse. Egypt becomes fantasy. Exotic, mystical, dangerous. Even when romanticized, it is never real. The Orientalist lens you once helped craft is now a mass-market product. The mystery of Egypt is preserved, but truth is diluted. Accuracy sacrificed for spectacle. You gave the West Rosetta. Now it prefers Ra and riddles, but even this serves Egypt in ways you didn't foresee. Tourists arrive by the millions. They walk where your soldiers marched, ride boats where your fleet once burned. They pay in dollars, euros, yen, money flowing into a country that now controls its own image, at least partially. Cairo learns to speak many tongues. Museum guides become actors. Pharaohs become brands. And Egypt becomes eternal in a new way. no longer just carved in stone, but flickering, on screens, printed on t-shirts, sold in gift shops. There is something grotesque in this commercialization, but also something victorious. The past you tried to decipher has now outgrown its decipherers. The ancient world you uncovered is now global mythology. And though your name is etched on monuments of conquest, Tutankhamun's mask outshines you. Even modern Egyptian leaders, some democratic, many authoritarian, embrace the gold and granite of the past. Presidents are photographed before pyramids. State TV opens with pharaonic music. Massive highway projects reroute around sphinxes. New museums rise like temples. The Grand Egyptian Museum, decades in the making, is a colossus not just of architecture, but of intention. It tells the world, Egypt speaks for itself now. You may have opened the sarcophagus, Napoleon, but others carried the bones into the spotlight. You once stood on the banks of the Nile, gazing across sand and time, believing that history could be bent, that legacy could be commanded. You wrote your name on stones. You carved your ambitions into maps. But time, like the river, erodes, and now, Egypt looks back at you not as a master, not even as a villain, but as a mirror. It reflects the hunger of empires. You came with cannons and scholars, speaking of reason and light, but you were still conquest dressed in philosophy. Egypt remembers. So does Britain. So does France. So does every museum with mummies behind glass. What was taken in the name of knowledge is now debated in the language of justice. Statues, obelisks, and manuscripts, scattered across the West like trophies, are now objects of reclamation. Egypt, once dissected and described, now demands return. It asserts, "These are not your wonders, these are ours." You see, the world has turned. Your vision of civilization, of progress through domination, is now judged by those you once overlooked. You are not alone in this reckoning. Rome, Britain, Belgium, Spain. All empires see themselves now through a harsher lens, and yet, your echo remains. Not in your victories, not in the busts or titles, but in the tension you embodied. The dream of building eternity by conquering the past. That dream haunts the modern world. Every museum curation, every archaeological dig, every war fought near a ruin. Still today, when a tomb is found, when a new inscription is read, the name Napoleon is never far. You were not the first to awaken Egypt to Europe, but you made that awakening inescapable. You forced the world to look at the Nile not as a distant wonder, but as a key to its own origin. That was your real conquest. Now, in the present age, your bones lie in Les Invalides, beneath layers of marble and myth. Tourists pass your tomb in silence, some in awe, some unsure why you matter. But Egypt still moves. It surges with the future, and with every new discovery, every reclaimed artifact, every Egyptian child learning about Ramses in Arabic, not French, your grip loosens. History has moved on, but it has not forgotten you. Because in every empire that rises, in every myth that modernity recycles, there is still that whisper, what if I too could last forever? And that is your echo, not as a man, but as a warning and a question. And so the whisper of your echo fades, but you remain. Even as Egypt reclaims her story, even as history rewrites your shadow, you still walk forward, into snow, into silence, into Russia. For after the crown and the empire and the monuments, there is still one desire you cannot extinguish: control. Russia is vast, it does not threaten you directly. It moves like a glacier, slow, enigmatic, self-contained. But that is what disturbs you most. You cannot read it, you cannot bend it, and so you decide to break it. You assemble the largest army Europe has ever seen, over 600,000 men from every corner of your empire, French, Polish, Italian, German, united not by loyalty but by the gravity of your will. It is not merely war, it is prophecy. You believe that if you conquer Moscow, the world itself will freeze in awe. And so, the Grande Armée marches eastward, across the Niemen River, into the belly of a continent that has devoured invaders for centuries. At first, the campaign is swift. Cities fall, fortresses crumble, Smolensk is taken. But something is wrong. There are no great battles. The Russians refuse to meet you in open field. They retreat, burn, destroy. You are chasing a ghost across scorched earth, and then comes Borodino. It is not a triumph, it is a massacre. Over 70,000 men fall in a single day. The field is soaked in blood. You take it, but the cost is unbearable. And still the Russian army does not break. Moscow lies ahead, and you reach it. You wait for surrender, for diplomats, for a white flag. Instead, you are greeted by silence and fire. The Russians burn their own capital. You stand in the heart of Moscow, victorious and utterly defeated. There is nothing left to conquer. Now the snows begin, and you understand. Too late, the real enemy. Not men, not armies, but distance. Time cold. Your soldiers begin to die not by blade, but by breath. Frostbite, starvation, exhaustion. The roads become graveyards. Horses collapse. Men walk barefoot across frozen rivers. The retreat is worse than any battle. Your empire, once lightning across the map, now bleeds in slow motion. You abandon the army. You race back to Paris. You must preserve the throne. The illusion. But Russia, it has shattered the myth. You are no longer invincible, and the world has smelled your blood. The snow of Russia has not only buried your army, it has unearthed your enemies. They smell opportunity, like wolves circling a wounded lion. The Sixth Coalition rises. Russia leads, but others follow. Prussia, Austria, Sweden, Britain, even Spain, once cowed, now emboldened. Once scattered, now united by one goal, your destruction. In Paris, you mask the truth. You speak of temporary setbacks, of tactical withdrawals, of glorious return. You call for new levies. You summon boys to become men, men to become soldiers. France bleeds, but still obeys. And so you raise a new army, smaller, younger, desperate, but still yours. In 1813, you meet them at Leipzig. They call it the Battle of the Nations, a name, etched in finality. You fight with brilliance, with fury, with the ghost of Marengo and Austerlitz burning in your veins. But it is no longer enough. You are outnumbered, outmaneuvered, outlasted. For 3 days the fields run red. Your eagles fall one by one. And when the Saxons, your own allies, turn against you mid-battle, it is as though the world itself rebels. Against your name, you retreat across the Rhine. And for the first time since you rose from obscurity, the war reaches French soil. In Paris, fear returns. The same fear that once clung to the revolution, to Robespierre, to guillotines in shadowed squares. Now they whisper not of glory, but of endings. Your enemies advance from all sides, coalition armies pouring into France like a tide. You fight still with genius and desperation, winning small victories. Montmirail, Champaubert, but they are pebbles against an avalanche. And worst of all, your marshals, the iron circle that once obeyed your every nod, begin to doubt, not your skill, but your fate. You can no longer promise victory, only resistance, and resistance when all else is lost is the seed of betrayal. You race back to Paris, but you are too late. In April 1814, your own generals confront you. They demand abdication, not as enemies, but as men who can no longer follow. A fire that burns itself. The Senate turns. The people watch in silence. You are offered a compromise. Live, but leave. You sign your name, not in command, but in surrender. And for the first time, you are no longer emperor. You are just a man. They send you to Elba, an island of rock and memory, a small court, a few ships, a title in mockery, Emperor of Elba. And yet, the world exhales. They believe it is over, but they do not know you. Not yet. Elba is a prison disguised as a palace. You walk its shores like a lion in a cage. The title Emperor means nothing here. You supervise roads, organize a miniature army, attend local festivals, but every gesture feels like mockery. The world has moved on. France now rests in the hands of Louis XVI, bloated and backward, draped in Bourbon white. And yet, you listen. Smugglers bring whispers across the sea. The Bourbons are weak. France groans under the weight of nobles and priests. Veterans are unpaid, officers are insulted. The revolution's children, your children, have been told to forget the dream. But dreams do not die so easily. They sleep, and now they stir. Your decision is not made in haste. It is forged like a sword in silence. Every moment on Elba is a whetstone. Every insult from Paris a spark. In February 1815, you leave under moonlight, a handful of men, one ship, no army. And yet you return not as a fugitive, but as a storm. You land near Cannes. The royalist troops are waiting. You walk toward them alone. "Soldiers of the 5th Regiment," you cry. "If there is one among you who would shoot his emperor, let him do it now." Silence. Then, "Vive l'Empereur." The army joins you, and so begins the 100 days, not of rule, but of resurrection. Each step north is a procession. Grenoble, Lyon, Auxerre. France remembers. The tricolor flies again. Old soldiers weep. New recruits swarm. Marshals return to your side, drawn once more by the flame. Louis flees Paris before you arrive. And just like that, you are emperor again, without a drop of blood. But it is no longer the Europe of Austerlitz. The coalition no longer waits. They mobilize at once. Two armies converge. Wellington's Anglo-Allied force in Belgium, and Blücher's Prussians to the east. You must strike before they unite, and so you move with lightning. You split your enemies. You attack with fury, and on June 16th at Ligny, you defeat the Prussians. The dream returns. For a moment. 2 days later, you face Wellington at Waterloo. Rain falls like a curse. The ground is mud. Your men are weary, but their hearts blaze. You command with brilliance. Ney charges, D'Erlon advances. The Imperial Guard awaits your signal, but the battlefield resists you. Marshal Grouchy fails to intercept the Prussians. Blücher arrives late, but not too late. Wellington holds the ridge, and then the Guard falters. For the first time in your reign, the Guard retreats. La Garde recule. The cry spreads like fire. Panic, collapse, ruin. Waterloo is not just a defeat. It is an ending. You return to Paris once more, but this time there is no salvation. The Chamber of Deputies refuses to support you. Public opinion shatters. You abdicate again. But now there is no Elba. There is only exile. True exile. They choose the farthest corner of the earth. St. Helena, a rock in the South Atlantic. Windswept, isolated, forgotten. You go willingly. What else is there but you carry something with you? Not an army, not a crown, a legend. And it still burns. St. Helena, a speck of volcanic rock lost in the South Atlantic, lashed by storms, shrouded in mist. No glory, no armies, no applause. Here, the world intends for you to vanish, not as a martyr, but as a memory dulled by sea winds and time. You arrive in October 1815. There is no palace. You are lodged at Longwood House, a damp, decaying structure surrounded by British guards, fences, and suspicion. Even the furniture groans with boredom. You ask for books, writing tools, maps, anything to preserve the rhythm of thought. They are slow to arrive. Everything is slow here, even decay. Your jailer is Sir Hudson Lowe, punctual, cold, bureaucratic, a man obsessed with rules. He sees not a legend, but a prisoner. To him, Napoleon is a threat best managed by humiliation. Every request you make is delayed, doubted, or denied. Your visitors are scrutinized. Your words are monitored. Even your walks are restricted, but you do not beg. You endure. Because now your war is not with muskets and maps. It is with memory. You turn inward. You write. You summon your companions, Bertrand, Montholon, Gorgo, Las Casi, and dictate your history, page after page. You describe Marengo, Austerlitz, Jena, Moscow. You explain your vision for France, for Europe, for posterity. You do not flinch from your failures, but you shape them. Even in exile, you are emperor of narrative. Your words will outlive cannon fire. You are determined to make the world understand you, not as a monster, not as a tyrant, but as a force of nature guided by reason, justice, and destiny. What? A novel my life has been, you say. But this is not fiction, it is testimony. The island wears on you, the winds whip through your windows, your health declines, stomach pains grip you. The doctors are unsure. They offer no relief. Hudson Lowe denies even the comfort of laudanum. The damp air and endless gray gnaw at your spirit. But still, you write. You dictate letters to kings. You compose meditations on Caesar, Alexander, Charlemagne. You calculate strategies for wars you will never fight. You dream of your son, the king of Rome, rising one day to continue your legacy. You are no longer a general. You are a myth in motion, a ghost still casting a shadow over Europe. Even in this prison of rock and rain, your legend grows. Far away, France stirs, Bonapartists whisper, romantics write verses about the eagle chained, and your enemies across Europe realize something strange, that in trying to bury you, they have made you immortal. The years bleed together on St. Helena, rain, mist, wind, the same damp sheets, the same cracked walls, the same uneasy silence. Your body weakens. By 1820, you can feel it, something deep within, unraveling. The stomach pains intensify. You can barely eat. Sleep comes in fits. Even your memory, once razor-sharp, flickers like a candle in fog. You consult the heavens less often now. Instead, you gaze at your garden. You walk among the rocks with Bertrand or Montholon by your side, describing the battles they already know. Not to instruct, but to remember. Not to plan, but to hold on. History still lives in you, but time does not wait. The sickness worsens. You take to bed. The fever burns. Your skin grows pale. Your hands tremble when they reach for the pen. The dam. Quill falls more often than not. The doctors mutter phrases like ulcer, inflammation, carcinoma, but their cures are clumsy. Their certainty is hollow. You begin to prepare. You order a will written. You make careful bequests to your loyal servants, to your son to France. You dictate even the clothes you wish to be buried in, the uniform of a chasseur of the Imperial Guard, and you say one final wish, to be buried on the banks of the Seine, among my people. But the British are deaf. St. Helena shall be your grave. Your last days are quiet. You drift in and out of lucidity. Some days you speak as if you are on campaign again, shouting orders, calling for maps, asking after cavalry positions. Other times you whisper names, Josephine, Eugène, Lens, your son, always your son. To the last he remains the beating heart of your dream, a dream that refused to die, even as your body collapses. May 5th, 1821. The storm outside howls. Inside Longwood, you murmur your final words, France. The army, head of the army, Josephine. Then silence. The breath leaves you not as a general, not even as an emperor, but as a man who held the world in his fist and died clutching only memory. You are buried in the Valley of the Willows, on St. Helena, far from the Seine, far from the throne you carved in fire and glory. But your story does not sleep, not truly, because even here, on a rock in the ocean, you have defied your enemies. You are dead, but you are not gone. You are history's wound, you are its echo. The emperor is dead, but the shadow remains. On the cliffs of St. Helena, the wind whispers your name across the empty Atlantic. In the salons of Paris, in the alleys of Vienna, in the barracks of Prussia, your ghost lingers. Kings may breathe easy. Thrones may feel steadier, but no crown forgets the tremble your name inspires. You have become more than mortal. You are memory wrapped in myth. In France, they come to terms slowly. The monarchy reigns again, stiff and trembling, but no Bourbon king can command the soul of a nation the way you once did. The people speak of you in hushed tones, at first in fear, then in longing. Children play at being Bonaparte. Old veterans finger their faded medals. Your statues survive, unofficial, unbowed. The tricolor is lowered but never forgotten. And then in 1840 the tide turns. Louis-Philippe, seeking to soothe the nation, makes a fateful decision. You will come home. 19 years after your death, your remains are exhumed. The ship that carries you across the ocean is not a vessel. It is a procession. French sailors weep. Officers stand in solemn ranks. As you pass through the streets of Paris once more, the city does not watch with awe. It kneels les Invalides, a golden dome, a temple of memory. Beneath it, you are laid to rest in a sarcophagus of red quartzite, encircled by laurels and victory. 12 sculpted victories stand watch. Engraved around your tomb are the names of your triumphs: Austerlitz, Marengo, Wagram, Genie, Friedland, and beneath it all one word: Napoleon. No title, no crown, because none is needed. Your enemies called you tyrant, monster, antichrist. Your allies called you genius, savior, emperor. But history is not written by kings alone. It is carried on the breath of those who remember. And they remember you, not as a man without fault, but as a man who dared. You challenged the old world and made it bend. You walked through fire, not just to seize power, but to redefine it. You wore a crown not by birthright, but by audacity. And in that choice, you broke the chains of centuries, not for yourself alone, but for an idea. Today, tourists shuffle quietly past your tomb. Some know your battles, others know only your name, but all feel it. That weight, that silence that hums with legacy. Because the emperor does not sleep. He waits, not to rise again, but to remind the world that once a man stood alone against kings and made the world kneel. The empire fell, but it did not vanish. You, the man, were caged and buried, but the revolution you carried on your shoulders, cloaked in eagles and steel, refused to die. Across Europe, the soil you scorched became strangely fertile, and from new ideas sprouted, some loyal, some hostile, all unmistakably touched by you. The kings believed they had restored the old order, but they had only painted over the cracks. Behind their palaces, your fingerprints lingered. France is the first to feel the weight of your echo. Though the Bourbons return, their reign is fragile. Your civil code remains intact. Your laws, your courts, your meritocracy. The generals you once elevated become ministers. The streets still bear your name. The people still whisper your words. In 1830, the monarchy fractures again. The tricolor rises once more, this time over a constitutional throne. It is not Bonapartist, but it is not Bourbon either. The people demand to be heard now. They have tasted the power of will, and they cannot return to silence. Even your family is not forgotten. In 1848, as revolutions sweep Europe like wildfire, your nephew rises, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, the son of your brother, the shadow of your legend. He wins the presidency of the Second Republic with ease, but the crown calls to him as it once called to you. By 1852, he too becomes emperor, Napoleon III. The dynasty is reborn, but your legacy is no longer just French. It has crossed borders, like thunder echoing from a cannon. In Italy, young patriots remember how you once carved out kingdoms and chased away Habsburgs. Men like Mazzini, Garibaldi, and Cavour look to your campaigns for inspiration. The dream of a united Italy gains shape from your maps. In Germany, the small states you once shattered begin to think of union. Prussia watches your military reforms and adopts them. The Germans do not forget how your defeat made room for their rise, but they also do not forget how your example changed their sense of destiny. Even in Poland, dismembered and bleeding, your name is a battle cry. You once gave hope to a people without a state, and for decades after your fall, Polish rebels still invoke you as the promise of liberty against empire. You fought to end feudalism, and it begins to wither. You crowned yourself, and monarchs tremble at the precedent. You made merit the path to greatness, and now Europe's sons clamor for the same chance. Every student of law, every conscripted soldier, every bureaucrat climbing the ranks without noble blood is a child of your vision. They do not all love you, but they all come after you, and none can ignore you. Your empire ends on an island, but your idea crosses oceans. While monarchs scramble to restore their thrones, while Europe burns and rebuilds, your legend takes root in a place where dreams run wild and ambition has no ceiling: the New World. In South America, revolutionaries carry your image in their hearts and your strategies in their satchels. Simón Bolívar, the liberator, studies your campaigns. He walks with your shadow beside him as he drives out the Spanish and builds nations from chaos. Bolívar does not merely mimic you. He becomes the American echo of your myth. In Mexico, your name arrives with cannon and crown, twisted, borrowed, but unmistakable. In 1861, decades after your death, France intervenes in the fragile Mexican Republic. Napoleon III, your nephew, dreams of resurrecting imperial order on new soil. He installs Maximilian of Habsburg as Emperor of Mexico. It is a ghost of your empire, dressed in borrowed robes, fighting a war it cannot win. By 1867, Maximilian is executed. The dream dies. But the audacity, the idea that empires can be built not by birthright but by will and force, that belongs to you. In the United States, the echoes are stranger, quieter, but no less real. Your Louisiana sale reshaped a continent. It doubled the size of a young republic. Cities like St. Louis, New Orleans, and Chicago boom from the soil you abandoned. The Mississippi becomes a new Rhine, and Americans, knowingly or not, grow within boundaries your diplomacy helped define. Your military doctrines are studied at West Point. Your engineering corps become models for American railroads, canals, and bridges. Even your failures, Russia, Spain, become textbooks in ambition and overreach. In the Civil War, generals on both sides consult your tactics. Grant, Lee, Sherman, all walk in your footsteps, though they wear no bicorns. And when America rises to empire in its own right, when it projects power across oceans, some whisper, they are not so different. Your myth is not always noble. Tyrants invoke you as justification for domination. Revolutionaries invoke you as proof that ambition can rule. In Paris, in Buenos Aires, in Cairo, in Tokyo, your name becomes a cipher, interpreted, translated, twisted. A symbol of both oppression and liberation, of despotism and destiny. But none forget you, because what you offered was more than conquest. You offered the idea that one man, by sheer will, brilliance, and daring, could reshape the fate of millions. You offered a story too large for one continent, too powerful for one century. Your bloodline was never meant to endure. You left no legitimate heir fit to wear your crown, and yet, your name refuses to die. Like a phoenix, it flickers in exile and smoke, only to rise again decades later in the strangest of forms. Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, your nephew, your echo, born in the shadows of your downfall, grows up with your bust on every mantle, your battles in every bedtime story. To the French people weary of Bourbon clumsiness and July monarchy mediocrity, the name Bonaparte carries not fear, but nostalgia. He seizes this. After failed coups and prison walls, he rises, slowly, patiently. Then, with the plebiscite of 1851, the cycle repeats. He becomes emperor. Napoleon III, France, restless and proud, embraces this second empire. It is not the France of your cannons, but of railways, banking houses, and ironclads. Paris is remade with boulevards wide enough to stop revolution and wide enough to march armies. But Louis Napoleon lacks your fire. He dreams your dream, but he walks more softly, He prefers compromise where you chose conquest. He surrounds himself with technocrats and visionaries, Haussmann, the urbanist, Persigny, the manipulator, Eugénie, the brilliant empress who whispers caution in his ear, and yet, he cannot resist your ghost. In Crimea, he sends French soldiers to fight Russia not for strategy but for glory. In Italy, he joins the wars of unification, eager to reframe France as the patron of liberty, just as you once claimed to be. He meets kings and emperors with a confidence borrowed from your legend. He paints himself as a modern Caesar, ruling not by sword but by progress. And for a while the world believes it, but shadows are not substance. His empire lacks your spine of iron. His wars lack your genius. His enemies are no longer monarchs, on horseback but nations, rising with nationalism and industrial might. Then comes the war that undoes it all. In 1870, the Franco-Prussian War. Bismarck goads. Prussia strikes. Louis Napoleon leads the army himself, just like you once did. But he is no general. At Sedan, he is encircled, humiliated, captured. Not even the Bonaparte name can shield him. Paris revolts. The empire collapses. A third republic is born. Louis Napoleon dies in exile, just like you. But even in failure, your myth persists. Statues still rise. Streets still bear your name. Veterans still toast to you as if you might return. Because France remembers not just the man, but the promise. That greatness could be seized, that destiny could be bent, that one name, Bonaparte, could outlive every regime it challenged. You are gone, but not forgotten. Your body lies beneath the golden dome of Les Invalides, enshrined in red porphyry, encircled by angelic sentinels and eternal silence. A tomb fit for a pharaoh in the heart of the city you reshaped. Tourists stare in reverence. Veterans salute in tears. Children learn your name before they can grasp its weight. But this is no quiet resting place. It is a statement. You demanded to be buried on the banks of the Seine among the French people. And so you are. Every stone whispers of ambition. Every bronze relief recalls your battles. And yet, your most enduring monument is not made of marble or gold. It is memory. Your myth mutates. To some, you are a tyrant, a Caesar reborn, who silenced the press, crowned himself, and bled Europe for pride. They cite the millions dead, the shattered republics, the dynasties built not on consent but conquest. They see you as a despot cloaked in Enlightenment words. But to others, you are a hero, the embodiment of meritocracy, a commoner who rose by genius, not birth, a reformer who brought law, order, and efficiency to chaos, the man who made France glorious again, who broke thrones and carried the torch of revolution across borders. They name streets after you. They sculpt your bust beside Caesar and Charlemagne. They place your hat on museum pedestals, your code in civil law, your legend in every language. In every century that follows, your name becomes a mirror, reflecting what people long for order, for greatness, for justice, for vengeance. Artists paint you in victory, in exile, in contemplation. Writers, Victor Hugo, Tolstoy, Chateaubriand, wrestle with your shadow. You are both monster and muse, saint and Satan, an emperor and a question mark. And in politics, your memory is ammunition. Liberals claim your merit. Conservatives claim your glory. Nationalists claim your courage. Revolutionaries claim your audacity. You are never simply a man. You are always an idea. The world changes. Flags rise and fall. New empires are born and die. But still, in moments of upheaval, people whisper, "What would Napoleon do?" Because you are not just history. You are a challenge to it. You once said, "My true glory is not to have won 40 battles, but what will live forever is my civil code." And in that, you were right. Armies dissolve, crowns topple, borders bleed, but the Napoleonic code endures. You didn't invent law, but you reshaped it. From the ashes of feudal patchwork and revolutionary chaos, You forged a system that was clear, rational, secular. A law that placed equality before the law above all else. A law that protected property, enforced contracts, strengthened the state, yet still bore the flame of liberty. You imposed it across your empire, yes, but it survived long after your empire crumbled. In Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, Poland, your code took root like grain in fertile soil. Even after your armies retreated, the laws remained. In Germany, in Latin America, in the Middle East, legal scholars translated, copied, reformed in your shadow. It became a legal lingua franca of modernity, guiding constitutions, shaping courts, training jurists. Today, more than 100 countries still carry your legal DNA, not by conquest, by consent. But it wasn't just law you left behind. It was order. The prefecture system, the national bank, the university reforms, the merit-based bureaucracy, the centralized administration. They remain the backbone of modern France. The map you drew of departments and arrondissements still governs the republic. Even the idea of the modern nation-state, with its standardized systems, passports, civil registries, and state schools, was born from your logic. You didn't just build an empire. You wrote the operating system for the world to come. And in culture, you set a standard no general, no statesman, no monarch could escape. Painters reimagined power in your posture. David, Gros, Ingres immortalized you in strokes of godhood. Architects raised arches in your name, none greater than the Arc de Triomphe, under which even your ashes were paraded. Musicians like Beethoven struggled to understand you, admiring your vision, then recoiling from your ambition. Philosophers dissected you. Poets mythologized you. Theaters staged you. Even Hollywood could not resist you. You were the first modern icon, engineered in print, portrait, and public ritual. And in doing so, you taught future generations how to project greatness, how to become more than a man, how to become a symbol. But symbols are double-edged, because even as you brought law and order, you also brought surveillance and censorship. Even as you built schools, you indoctrinated. Even as you uplifted merit, you crowned your brothers. Even as you claimed revolution, you recreated empire. Your real legacy is not simple. It is not pure. It is powerful. And it endures not because it is flawless, but because it is unforgettable. You are gone, and yet you are everywhere. In history books, you march eternally across Europe. In marble, you stand imperious and eternal. In classrooms, you are dissected, emperor, tyrant, genius, monster. In minds, you are the riddle of power. How much can one man shape the world? And at what cost? You made Europe modern, but not gentle. Your wars killed millions. Your ambition redrew borders with blood. Your rise inspired both freedom fighters and fascists. You embodied the promise of revolution and its betrayal. And still you fascinate. Why? Because you reflect us, our contradictions, our hunger for greatness, and our terror of it. Our dreams of control, and the chaos we unleash to achieve it. Modern dictators call you teacher. Modern reformers quote your laws. Modern leaders still study your campaigns. And modern citizens, those born into the states you helped shape, live daily within systems, institutions, and ideals you left behind. You are not just a man of the past. You are a ghost in the present, a question we keep asking. Can order and freedom coexist? Can greatness ever be innocent? You began as a symbol of revolution and ended as a cautionary tale. You toppled kings and crowned yourself, and yet even in exile, your shadow grew longer. The century that followed could not shake your imprint. From the rise of nationalism to the spread of liberal law to the cult of strong men in uniform, you were always in the mirror. Some feared you. Some emulated you. None ignored you. When you died on that lonely island of St. Helena, you said, France, army, head of the army, Josephine. Those were your final words. But the world heard more. It heard the end of one empire and the beginning of new myth. You were no longer just Napoleon, you were Napoleon, the idea. And ideas, unlike men, do not die. You believed yourself unstoppable. Empires bowed, kings crumbled, Europe trembled. But you were never content with trembling. You wanted silence, you wanted awe, and one voice still defied you: Russia. Tsar Alexander, young and enigmatic, had once toasted you as a friend, but friendship to you was conditional. He would not join your continental system. He would not strangle his economy for your ambitions. And so he became your enemy. In 1812, you launched your greatest campaign. Over 600,000 men, the largest army Europe had ever seen. You called it the Second Punic War Reborn. This was not conquest, it was domination. You would bring Russia to heel with thunder and steel. But Russia is not like other lands. You crossed the Niemen River in summer, banners flying. You expected a decisive battle, a swift surrender. But the Russians did not oblige. They retreated, burned their cities, denied you food, shelter, and glory. At Smolensk, your men fought for ashes. At Borodino, they fought for slaughter. The fields turned red. 40,000 dead in a single day. You called it a victory. But even you knew it was Pyrrhic. The Russian army survived. The Tsar did not yield. Still, you reached Moscow, the jewel of the East, empty, silent, burning. You waited in the Kremlin. No emissaries came, no treaty was offered, only snow. Then the snow turned to blizzards, and the blizzards turned your army into bones. Starvation, frostbite, Cossack raids, broken wheels, frozen rivers, dead horses, dead friends. You did not retreat. You escaped. The Grande Armée became a shattered myth. Fewer than 100,000 returned. Europe stirred. The spell had broken. Back in Paris, you tried to mask the disaster. You summoned new conscripts, claimed victory where there was ruin. But your enemies had seen weakness. Prussia rose. Austria broke from your grip. Sweden joined the chorus. Britain poured gold and men into the flames. And Russia marched. West, you had awakened a continent. The emperor was no longer feared, he was hunted. You returned to Paris. You speak of sacrifice, of glory. But you know the truth, Russia was not a campaign. It was a catastrophe. Yet even in ruin, you do not yield. You gather boys, veterans, mercenaries, whatever remains. You forge a new army. Smaller, less seasoned, but still yours. You believe in momentum. And momentum, like power, is a habit. But your enemies have learned your tricks, and they come for you. From the north, the Swedes, from the east, the Russians, from the south, the Austrians, and from the west, the Prussians. This is no coalition. It is a crusade. In 1813, you march east. Germany boils beneath your feet. You win battles, Lutzen, Bautzen, but they are not like before. The ground costs too much. Your marshals grow weary. Your horses fewer. Your time short. Then comes Leipzig, the battle of nations. More than 500,000 men collide. The largest battle Europe has ever known. For 4 days, the world holds its breath. Your army fights like lions. You command from the center. Marshals Ney, Murat, MacDonald, all drive the line forward. But the numbers, they are overwhelming. For every Frenchman, 2 stand against. On the final day, a bridge explodes too soon. Your retreat becomes a massacre. Men drown in the Elster River. Wagons, cannons wounded, all lost. Even your brother-in-law, Marshal Poniatowski, dies in the water, saber in hand. You watch from a hillside. Your vision dims. Your empire bleeds, and yet you do not collapse. You retreat. Not in disgrace, but in grim defiance. France still stands. And if they want Paris, they will have to take it. Back home, the people still cheer you. But it's fainter now. The plebiscites feel hollow. The Senate whispers. Even your family urges caution. But caution has never been your creed. You speak of honor, of destiny, of fighting to the end. And so, in the bitter winter of 1814, you prepare for the impossible. Defend France alone. No allies, no reserves, only the will of one man against a continent. Winter deepens, and with it the shadows around you. But you ride. France burns on every border. Yet you do not retreat to a throne. You take the field, your final symphony as a general. What follows is not a defense. It is a masterclass. You fight not with overwhelming numbers, but with sheer genius. 6 days, 6 battles. You crush Blücher at Champaubert. You outmaneuver Schwarzenberg at Montereau. You spring traps, reverse odds, dash across provinces like a man possessed. Your marshals falter. But you are fire reborn. Your enemies speak in. Even Wellington, watching from afar, says, "It is impossible not to admire the man." But admiration does not stop bullets. They come faster now. More armies, more blood. Paris cannot hold. The Austrians march through Fontainebleau. The Tsar rides into the capital with the Cossacks at his flank. Your marshals counsel surrender. You rage. You refuse. But even your loyalists are weary. They whisper of peace, of abdication, and finally you agree. You do not weep. You do not plead. You abdicate, not in shame, but with the pride of one who had once ruled all. April 1814. France bows. The tricolor falls, and you are exiled. Elba. A rock, a prison, a kingdom in mockery. They give you a palace, a guard, a flag. You pretend to rule, but every wave that crashes upon the island whispers one truth into your soul. You are not done. Across the sea, France bleeds under the restored Bourbons. Your eagles are hidden but not forgotten. And in every village there are whispers. He will return. And so you wait, not broken, not defeated, merely preparing. February 26, 1815. Night cloaks the harbor of Portoferraio. A small ship slips away from the Elban coast, sails taut with silence and intent. On board, you, Napoleon Bonaparte, not as prisoner, not as ghost, but as emperor reborn. You land near Cannes. No army greets you. No nobles announce your return, but word spreads like fire. You march north. Each village you pass, each town you enter, the crowds grow. At Grenoble, royal troops block the road. You walk forward alone, throw open your coat and shout, "If any of you would shoot your emperor, do so now." They do not shoot. They cheer, they weep, they join you. The king's soldiers become yours again, one regiment, then another. By the time you reach Lyon, you are no longer a fugitive. You are Napoleon, restored. March 20th, you enter Paris. The Bourbons flee without a fight. For the second time in your life, you seize a throne without spilling a drop of blood. The tricolor rises. The people rejoice. But there is no illusion. Europe will not allow this return. They do not see a prodigal sovereign. They see a nightmare revived. Austria, Prussia, Russia, and Britain declare war. Again. You have 100 days. 100 days to secure your rule. 100 days to defeat your enemies. 100 days to make the world bend to your will once more. You move fast. Reforms sweep through your new government. Old allies return to your side. Ney, Davout, Soult. The Grande Armée is reborn, a shadow of its former glory, but fierce. You choose to strike first. You aim for the weakest link, the Anglo-Prussian coalition in Belgium. If you break them before the others arrive, the balance might tip, and so begins your final campaign. The war drums beat once more, your flag waves again, the eagle soars toward destiny. But in the fields of Belgium, another figure waits. A general, known for caution and resolve, the man they call Wellington. And this time there is no room for error. June 18th, 1815. A field near the village of Waterloo, Belgium. Morning breaks beneath a sky of iron. You stand at the head of the Grande Armée, your last army. In your heart, fire. In your blood, memory. Before you, the Duke of Wellington and the British lines dug in, ready. You are outnumbered, but not outmatched. You still believe in your genius, in your men, in the possibility of victory. This is your final gamble. One last throw of the dice to reclaim the world. The field is soaked in rain and tension. Mud slows your artillery. You delay the attack until midday. Time slips through your fingers. At 11:30 a.m., the guns speak. Cannonballs arc through smoke. You hurl Derlin's corps at Wellington's right. They charge in waves, shouts drowning in musket fire. But the British hold. And from behind the ridgeline, Scots Greys and household cavalry explode from the mist, cutting down French infantry with steel and thunder. Your men fall back, shaken. You adjust. You send Ney, brave, reckless Ney, to seize the crossroads. At La Haye-Sainte, for hours, the field becomes a furnace. Charge and countercharge, gunpowder and steel. Cavalry clash on muddy slopes. Dragoons swirl in chaos. La Haye-Sainte changes hands. You retake it, at a terrible cost. Wellington's center wavers, but does not break. Still, you believe. Still, command, but then from the east thunder echoes. Not yours, Prussians, Blücher has arrived. The eastern horizon darkens with enemy banners. You gamble everything. You order the old guard, your immortals, to break the British center. Your last reserve, your final breath. They march through smoke and screams. The field quiets as the bear fur hats appear on the ridge. Even your enemies tremble. But Wellington holds British lines part and volley. The guard staggers, they falter, and then they break. Cries erupt. La Garde recule. The guard retreats. Panic spreads like plague. The invincible has fallen. Your army collapses into chaos. Men throw down muskets, horses flee, cannons are abandoned. You try to rally them, but the spell is broken. The Grande Armée is no more. You ride from the field, alone with your thoughts, your silence, your defeat. Waterloo is not just a battle. It is an ending. It is the fall of a titan, the death of an age, the moment when fate, at last, says no. You gave all. And for one day, one cursed storm-tossed day, it was not enough. You flee from Waterloo. Your cloak soaked, your dreams shattered, back to France but not to power. Paris greets you not with cheers, but with silence. The assembly turns away. The people, once electrified by your words, now whisper of peace, of endings, of moving on. You abdicate, for the second time. But now there will be no Elba, no 100 days. This time they want you gone forever. The British take custody. They do not fear your weapons anymore. They fear your ideas, your name, your ability to stir hearts from oceans away. So they send you where your shadow cannot reach, St. Helena, a rock in the middle of the South Atlantic, 1,600 kilometers from the nearest continent. You arrive not as a conqueror, but a prisoner, not in a golden carriage, but under guard. Longwood House becomes your cage. Humid, leaky, haunted by wind and damp. The world moves on without you. Europe redraws itself at the Congress of Vienna. Monarchs restore order. The old world breathes again. But you walk in a garden of memories. You write, endlessly. Your memoirs spill across pages like musket volleys. You defend your choices. You retell Austerlitz, Jena, Moscow, not as defeats, but as tests of destiny. You tell the world, I may have fallen, but I shaped an age. And you're not wrong. Soldiers still toast your name in secret. Revolutionaries read your words by candlelight. Even your enemies admit, without you, they would never have risen so high themselves. You were not just a man. You were a mirror held up to an entire continent. Your health fades, stomach pains, fatigue. Your proud figure withers, your once vibrant eyes dim. But your mind remains aflame, until May 5th, 1821. A storm overhead. You lie in bed, barely breathing. You whisper a final word. France, Armée, Josephine. And then, silence. The emperor is dead, but the legend, that would live forever. Statues would rise, books would multiply. Paintings, operas, revolutions, and regimes would invoke your name. To some, you would be a tyrant. To others, a hero. To history, an unavoidable force. You, who crowned yourself emperor, who shattered Europe, who dared dream beyond mortal reach. You, Napoleon Bonaparte, would never truly die. Not in memory, not in myth, not in the pulse of those who still believe in destiny shaped by will. The room grows quiet, but the story does not end. You have passed from this world, but the echo of your footsteps still resounds across centuries. The world that once trembled beneath your gaze moves forward, yet your shadow stretches long and free. From the ashes of defeat and exile, a legend is born. Not of flesh and blood, but of ideas, symbols, and undying inspiration. The story of Napoleon is retold and reshaped, sometimes glorified, sometimes demonized, but never forgotten. Artists, paint your face with dramatic light and shadow. Writers pen your exploits in novels, poetry, and plays. Historians debate your genius and faults in endless volumes. Theaters and cinemas bring you back to life with every scene. Empires rise and fall, but the myth endures. Your tactics become the study of armies. Your words inspire revolutionaries and reformers. Your life, a symbol of ambition, power, and the will to change the world. Across the globe, leaders invoke your name, sometimes as a warning, sometimes as a beacon. The French remember you as their little corporal, a man who dared to rewrite history. Napoleon is not just a man in the past. He is a force in the present and a legend for the future. The Napoleonic Code shapes modern law. Your reforms in education, administration, and society ripple on. Your dream of a unified Europe, though crushed in your lifetime, resurfaces again and again. The island of St. Helena became your prison, but history has made it a shrine. Pilgrims journey there, drawn by the tale of a man who reached for the stars and touched the heavens, only to fall back to earth. And so you live on, not just in books or statues, but in the hearts of those who believe that destiny can be forged by the strength of one will. This is the story of Napoleon's afterlife, where history becomes legend and legend becomes eternal. But history is never kind to simple endings. Napoleon's exile on St. Helena was meant to silence him forever, a forgotten man on a remote rock in the South Atlantic. Yet even in isolation, his mind remained sharp, his will unbroken. He dictated memoirs, carefully crafting his own legacy, his own version of events. These writings became a cornerstone for generations to understand the man behind the myth. Back in Europe, the Napoleonic Wars had reshaped borders, toppled monarchies, and ignited nationalist flames that would burn for centuries. The Congress of Vienna sought to restore the old order, but the world had changed irreversibly. Ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity had taken root, watered by the blood and fire of your campaigns. Europe's rulers knew that while your empire had fallen, your spirit could not be crushed. Monarchs both feared and admired the man who dared to challenge centuries of tradition. Your revolutionary reforms, legal codes, centralized administration, and meritocratic principles endured as the backbone of modern governance. The question echoes through time. What made you so compelling, so enduring? Was it your unmatched military genius, your indomitable ambition, or the tragic rise and fall, the drama of a man caught between revolution and empire? Perhaps it was all these. You embodied the contradictions of your era, the child of revolution, who crowned himself emperor, the liberator who imposed rule by force, the soldier who dreamed of peace yet waged war relentlessly. Your legacy is a mirror reflecting the complexities of power and human ambition. In art and literature, you became a symbol of greatness and hubris. From Tolstoy's vivid depictions, in War and Peace to the paintings of Jacques-Louis David, your figure looms large, a titan of history whose story still captivates the world. Your name is invoked in battles and boardrooms alike, a shorthand for strategic brilliance and political savvy. To some, you are a hero. To others, a cautionary tale. But above all, you remain a man who dared to rewrite destiny. You shattered the old world to build a new one. Your journey from an obscure Corsican officer to Emperor of the French is a testament to the power of vision, determination, and unyielding will. And as the centuries pass, that story, the story of Napoleon Bonaparte, will continue to inspire those who dream of greatness, who fight for change, and who believe that history is made not by fate, but by those bold enough to seize it. The end of your life was only the beginning of your legend, and that legend will never die. Though Napoleon's physical presence faded into the foggy exile of St. Helena, his influence swept across continents and centuries like an unyielding storm. The Napoleonic Code, forged from his vision of law and order, became the blueprint for civil law systems worldwide, emphasizing equality before the law and protecting property rights. It was a revolutionary legacy that outlived his military conquests. Beyond legal reforms, his reshaping of European geopolitics created the conditions for the rise of nationalism. The ideals of self-determination and national identity, sparked by his campaigns, later fueled the unification of Italy and Germany, and eventually led to the modern map of Europe. Yet, his life is also a powerful cautionary tale about the limits of ambition. For all his genius, his desire for glory ultimately led to ruin. The invasion of Russia, his greatest strategic blunder, highlighted how hubris can bring even the mightiest empires to their knees. His final defeat at Waterloo marked the collapse of a dream that had captivated an entire generation. But to focus solely on his defeats is to miss the larger story. Napoleon's true victory was the way he challenged the old world order. Monarchies, rooted in divine right and inherited privilege. He proved that a man of humble origins could ascend to unparalleled power through talent and determination. This radical shift opened the door to modern leadership, where merit and vision, rather than birthright, mattered most. As the sun set over St. Helena, the man who once dreamed of conquering Europe understood the transient nature of power and dream. Yet in that twilight, he embraced his fate with the same dignity and resolve that had carried him through a lifetime of battles and betrayals. History remembers not just the emperor who crowned himself in Notre-Dame, but the man who dared to change the course of history forever. Your story is a beacon to those who believe that the future belongs not to the chosen few, but to those who have the courage to seize it. And so, the final chapter closes, not with silence, but with a legacy that echoes across time. Napoleon Bonaparte, once a forgotten Corsican officer, rose to become the emperor of a continent, the architect of a new world order and a legend for the ages. The tale of Napoleon is not just a story of conquest and power, it is a story of vision, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of destiny.
Welcome to a journey through time, where the fate of Europe was rewritten by the will of one man. From the rugged hills of Corsica to the golden halls of imperial power, this is the epic story of Napoleon Bonaparte, a soldier, a strategist, a storm that shook the world. In this video, we'll follow his rise from obscurity to the throne, and uncover how ambition, war, and destiny carved the path of an empire. Let the story begin.